Congratulations! You have found the Lambcast, the official podcast of the large association of movie blogs, also known as the Lamb. The Lamb is the largest collective of online movie blogs and podcasts with 2,000 members and counting. Every week on the Lambcast, various members of the Lamb community get together to talk about our favorite subject, movies. So bookmark the Lamb and follow us on social media. Be sure to join us each week to hear a lively discussion of films and movie-related talk from our members. Join the flock at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lambcast. This is episode 759, and I'm your host, Richard Kirkham from Kirkham A Movie A Day. It's navel-gazing time as we tear off the last page of the 2024 calendar and move into the new year with great expectations. This week, we look back on the films that will define 2024 and share our rankings of the movies that mattered to us. We have 4 other Lambs with us on the show and a smattering of lists that were shared with us by folks who were unable to join the podcast this week. Let's find out what people thought of last year's slate of films. Tony Coogan from Coog's Reviews and the Wicker Man podcast has a list based on the release schedule in the UK. We may hear about some films yet to come or some that were left over from 2023. Regardless, we always welcome his input. Welcome, Tony.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Rishabh Vashishtha joins us for what seems like an annual event for him. I think this may be the 4th year in a row he's been on this particular episode.
Hey, everyone, and for that, Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year to you, too. Taking a break from festivals and drinking, long enough to join us on the show, is Thomas Stoneham Judge. For real.
I may or may not have a mimosa with me right now.
We don't judge. All right. And sitting on the edge of his seat, bursting with enthusiasm for who knows what, the Vern from Cinema Recall.
Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. I'm very happy and excited and honored to be back on the show. Thank you.
Great. Well, we're mostly sharing our top 10 lists of the 2024 movie season, and people can use whatever criteria you want. If you want to tell us what the best films were, that's great. If you want to tell us what your favorite film is, that's good too. If you measure it by some artistic quality, it's up to you to decide. It might help as we go along if you tell us how many films you actually saw, but that's not a requirement. It's just something that might assist us in figuring out what kind of filter you are using. For everybody listening, we do a round-robin discussion, and we use the Pineapple Kiosk rules. So if a film comes up that's higher on somebody else's list, we wait and talk about it at its highest point. Tony, I'm going to ask you to start. Tell us what your reasons for picking the films on your list are and what your number 10 pick is.
So, yeah, I think as you said, I'm basing this on my, what I'm still in the UK and what the UK release schedule is. So, yeah, I said there may be some films that are on other people's lists that are ineligible for mine because they don't come out in the UK until next year. Now, just let me get I'll do a bit of a honorable mentions for that. And also, we've got some ones that in my list that covered. I'm pretty sure there's one that was covered in the Best of 2023 episode that was done. That's on my list for this year. But my number 10's one that I'm pretty sure was US release as well as the UK one last year, and that is My Old Ass.
All right.
Oh, I want to see this one. I've heard trailers about it, but I've never had a chance to see it. So please continue.
So this one is focus on when he's just about to leave a small farming area of America, going over to move to university in Toronto, and this is basically all of it is focused on the last few weeks of her life with her family. But the main start point is when she takes magic mushrooms and ends up hallucinating, whether it's real or it's an hallucination that's a bit left up in the air, and has a conversation with her older self, who gives a bit of advice about the future, ends up warning her about a person called Chad, and then that person Chad ends up getting involved in life, and it ends up starting as a romance forming. And a lot of film is just this really bittersweet look at life and the regrets and pains of current life and how people look back on it, both in terms of how we view it as a section of their life currently and how it's viewed back by them in the future. And there's some interesting ideas here brought up about sexuality and person's sexual identity that's created some really interesting moments. Well, it's also like a really funny film. There is like two bits in particular which just like laugh out loud funny. There's one bit where the main character's brother is obsessed with Saoirse Ronan and ends up just having and just see a Saoirse Ronan wall in the house. And then say another a magic mushroom scene where the main character just does a dance number set to Justin Bieber's One Less Lonely Girl, and I'm not a Justin Bieber fan, and this is probably the first time I've heard that song.
Well, if you've got a Saoirse Ronan wall and magic mushrooms, I assume that it was filmed in Vern's bedroom.
Oh yeah, that's probably true. Wait, is this the one with Aubrey Plaza as the older? Is Aubrey Plaza this one?
Yes. Yeah, that's this one. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I think on Prime, but I'm not sure.
I haven't caught up with it, but nobody else has it on their list. So, Tony, you are an outlier on this one, but that's okay. We like that. Thomas, you're up next.
Yes.
What's your number 10, and what's your criteria for picking films?
So here's what I'm actually going to do. What I'm going to do is these are my favorite films of the year. It's really hard to label like best and stuff because I think particularly this year, comparing things side by side has been very, very difficult. I think that this was a really great year for film, from my perspective, and so I'm really happy with like everything that's on my list, and I'm sad that there are some things that couldn't make my list. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to do my 15 to 5 ranking. I'm doing a top 10 on my own page, so what you're getting is the 10 before my top 5. And this actually allows me to talk about a few films that didn't make my top 10, which I am happy to talk about. And so, essentially, so I'm going to start on 15 and then work my way up to 5, and you can get the rest on my website. But, these are still really great movies to check out. So, what's coming in first on this list is, kind of an under the radar, film called, Strange Darling.
Ooh, Pineapple Kiosk.
This movie, I was hearing so many good things about this movie from friends.
Okay, we're going to wait to talk about it because apparently Vern has it on his list.
Yep.
Oh, perfect,
yep.
Perfect. If I can just give the synopsis real quick, it just says nothing is what it seems when a twisted one-night stand spirals into a serial killer's vicious murder spree. Yeah, let's talk about this a little bit later.
Oh, so good.
Good deal. All right. Well, we'll skip the next one, and we'll just keep going the way we're going. Rishabh, what's your number 10? Unless you've decided to cheat and start us off at number 32.
Yeah, I'll have to get the rest on my website. No, I'm just kidding.
Cross promotion.
I'll be going 10 through 1. And number 10 might be a Pineapple Kiosk. I think just knowing possibly this group might have seen this movie well, the rest of the nation probably didn't. It's amazing that this guy is still working, this late into his career. Number 10 is Clint Eastwood's Juror Number 2.
Pineapple Kiosk.
There we go. Okay.
I'm so interested in hearing more about what you guys thought on this film. I have my own thoughts on it, but I'm interested in more positive perspectives on it.
Well, we'll definitely be talking about it later on, and if we're going by my list, much later on. Vern, are you going to give us something that we can actually talk about?
Hopefully. All right, so I am doing my top 10 favorite movies / best of 2024, and my number 10 is a sequel that I thought wasn't so good the first time I saw it, but I saw it again and it got better. I am doing Beetlejuice. Tim Burton's second in the Beetlejuice saga. I imagine there'll be more of them. And I gotta say, the cast in this is very good. Michael Keaton, it doesn't seem like he left the role at all. Catherine O'Hara just shines in this. She's probably like my favorite part about this movie. I even like Winona Ryder and Jenna Ortega. I wish they used Monica Bellucci's character just a little bit more. That's my only kind of gripe about this movie. They introduce this great character, and then she kind of like just disappears, and then comes back sporadically, so that's probably the only weakest part. But overall, it's great. The practical effects are fun. It has a good storyline. I do not like the song at the end, but that's okay. I still think that this is a solid sequel made by just good friends getting together and making a comedy, and you can see their fun making this movie when you watch it. And I'm infected by it. I thought it was a lot of fun. So yeah, my number 10, Beetlejuice.
Getting the band back together for a reunion show, and it's a good show. I think that worked pretty well. I remember we talked about this when it came out, and I think that everybody on the show generally liked it. I do remember your complaint about the lack of use of Monica Bellucci, but
I think just the lack of her in anything is a bad thing. There should be more Monica Bellucci in everything.
All right. Well, I'm sorry I don't have any films on my list that make effective use of her, but I will share my list as well. And my list I'm going to be straightforward about it. I'm down a little bit in the number of new films that I saw this year. Usually I'm somewhere up in the in the 70s range. I'm down in the 50s range here. I saw a lot of classic films. A lot more classic films than I saw in new films, so that was a little bit surprising. And of course, I'm only talking about films that I saw in a theater. So if something came out on Netflix but never played in a theater, I don't include it on my list. And my list is made up of favorites, not necessarily the best films that are out there, but the ones that I liked the best. And I still have yet to get to a whole bunch of the prestige pictures here at the end of the year. I'm a little slow on catching up on those. Just a busy time of year, but we got a couple of things going on. But at number 10 is something that did come out near the end of the year, and it's a Christmas film. It's the best Christmas pageant ever.
I know nothing about this.
Well, Judy Greer is the star, and it's kind of let's face it, it's a heartwarming Christmas story with comedy in it. It features a bunch of kids who are a problematic family who kind of inject themselves into this small town's Christmas pageant, and everybody is worried about how it's going to come out. And Judy Greer plays the mom who takes over directing the program because of the previous director being incapacitated because of an accident. And of course, it involves kind of the social circles that exist in the small town, the viewpoint of the outsiders versus the insiders. It's told in a very nostalgic kind of way, so I think it'll be familiar to people who like films like A Christmas Story. There's a little bit of narration in the film, but most of it is, of course, on screen. And there are a lot of laughs, but at the end of the movie, you just say, that was a nice Christmas movie. It was fun, and it would be something that I would repeat on a yearly basis. So that's how it made my list, and I enjoyed it quite well. Nobody else has seen it, huh?
I've just heard about it. Just when you mentioned those words right now, Richard, is when I heard of this movie.
Okay, well, that's all right. That's all right. I'm sure that, when we get to Strange Things, or Strange Darlings, I should say, I have no idea what the hell's going on there except for what Thomas told us in his summary.
That is the perfect way to go into that movie. The perfect way to go into it.
Good. Well, make sure you don't reveal anything. Tony, we're back to you. What have you got number 9 on your list?
Okay. So for my number 9, it's the first animated film that I've got on my list for this year. And I know for a lot of people, it's honestly the best animated film of the year, the one that's probably going to win the Oscar for best animated film, and that's The Wild Robot.
Pineapple Kiosk. So we're going to put that one off for a little bit because it appears that it was a popular choice, and like you said, there may be Academy Award talk coming up too. We'll see how that goes. Thomas, what are we on, 14 here?
14. We're on 14. Yep.
Okay.
For number 14, I am putting Saturday Night, Jason Reitman. I vibed so hard with this film. And I think that when I was writing kind of my notes out, that's the word that's going to come up a lot with the movies that I chose, is that's like the vibe. I just really, really vibed with this. It works so well. Essentially, so for those who don't know about Saturday Night, it's a dramatized account of the hour and a half leading up to the airing of the first episode of Saturday Night Live. And it is a wild ride. It just does such a great job at being very high paced, at being funny, and really and really using this ensemble cast in as I guess the best way that you could in, this 90-something minute runtime, or I think it's about 100-minute runtime. But yeah, it's a fun ride. I saw it at TIFF. And liked it enough to see it again when it had a screening at the Vancouver Film Festival. So I went out of my way for that. And it's just a fun movie for me. I had a really great time with it.
Thomas, the cast in this is very good. I think Corey Michael Smith is perfect as Chevy Chase. He's probably my favorite person there. He does such a great job.
Is he playing as much of an arsehole as apparently Chevy Chase was in real life?
Oh, very much so.
There's a scene with J.K. Simmons and Corey Michael Smith that is just like a highlight of the film, just almost literally measuring dicks. It's great.
Kudos to all the cast in this, because they look exactly and sound exactly like the Saturday Night Live actors. I went back and watched the first episode of SNL because you can watch them all on Peacock, and I was just blown away about how well not only do they look like the SNL counterparts, but they sound like them too. This is definitely my honorable mention right there, but this is a fun movie.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying it would have been around number 14 for you too?
Well, yeah. I just had some issues with the storyline I went to, but I do love the cast of this, and I think it's worth watching just to watch the cast members. But I wasn't really into the storyline too much of this movie.
All right.
One thing I will say on this movie, just before we go on, is I appreciate how much of a deep cut this movie was. I think they really didn't try too hard to make it, historically, they didn't stray away from the historical accuracy to make it palatable for the rest of the audience. I think they just went for it and showed that, comedians, especially back in the day when they were doing this episode, they said whatever they wanted to and ruffled feathers if they needed to. So I appreciate the movie for going there.
Nice. Rishabh, what have you got in your number 9 spot?
My number 9 is a movie that was at first touted as like a pretty big prestige pick at the beginning of the year. It was supposed to go in and snag some awards. It also made a chunk of change at the box office, but never really picked up the traction it was supposed to, I think, going into Oscar season. I think it just became controversial a little bit. Number 9, I have Alex Garland's Civil War. All right.
Nobody else has mentioned it.
Not my list here. It's a good one, but not my list.
All right. So, Rishabh, go ahead and tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So I think when the trailers came out for this movie, everyone had a slightly different idea of what this was going to be. I think just given the state of the political climate here in the States, I think everyone was thinking this would be a big political treatise and, take on relevant political topics in some way or be very controversial in that sense. But I think what director Alex Garland did here is actually something more notable than that. I think he went for something that's actually more impactful than, making some, broad political statement. I think he basically used war-torn America and kind of used that as a lens to go through a movie about journalistic ethics, national identity, and also at what point do we as just citizens or even as humans look at war with a level of objectivity, and when do we become completely desensitized to that? So the movie follows a group of photojournalists as they go through a fictional, speculative, war-ridden landscape in the United States where another civil war is taking place. Basically following this group of journalists as they document and go through a landscape where our nation is truly divided. I think a lot of the reason why this movie didn't work is because I think people's expectations just was for something different, something a little bit more pointed in a political sense. But I think Alex Garland actually made a more interesting movie about journalism and objectivity rather than something that's very, socio-political in nature. But overall, I think once this movie ends, you'll definitely think a lot more about journalism, about what it means to be a nation, what it means to have an identity as a nation. I think this is a surprisingly layered film, despite the fact that most people were looking for something more political, I guess.
I think Jesse
about Civil
Plemons.
War.
Oh, sorry. I like this movie. I think Jesse Plemons deserves the best Oscar nomination, best supporting
Yes,
actor
give him a nomination.
Just for that.
That was a
Yo.
great scene.
That
He was
scene,
really
it's
The
so
best, yeah, best
it's so
one scene
unnecessary
performance
for
of
the
year.
film, but it just stole the movie. Like,
100%.
it's so good.
Apparently he was like very, very last minute and pretty much only got there because he was happened to be available since he's married to Kirsten Dunst and he was able to get there quickly enough.
Yeah,
and
then
he
just
gave that performance.
and just hijacked the movie. Like
Yeah.
that was I agree with a lot of what you're saying about expectations, because I think a lot of us with the current political climate here in the States, we were expecting something pretty on the nose. I think.
Right.
So there were misplaced expectations. So I agree with that, and I do think that it is a much more layered movie than that, and it's one that actually has grown more on me since I've watched it. And so I think in that sense it's really good. But man, that Jesse Plemons scene, like I think that might have been a knock to the film because I needed more of him in the movie.
Yeah.
I agree. I've heard that from a lot of people. He really carries that scene for sure. For sure.
And this has some of the best shot action sequences I have seen
Agreed.
in 2024. Got to see this IMAX, and I was kind of blown away by a lot of the shots in this movie. And I think the acting is great. Wasn't vibing too much in the full storyline of it, though. But yeah, good pick.
Well, what were you vibing to, Vern, in your number 9 spot?
Okay, so I know on my Instagram I posted my top 10 favorite best movies of the year, and when doing so, there were also some underrated movies that I should have put in here. So my list you see on Instagram is going to be different than what you're going to hear on this episode. But my number 9, I'm going to do a movie that I saw not too recently, and that is Love Lies Bleeding.
Honorable mention for me.
Ooh, very cool.
Rose Glass feature with Kristen Stewart and Ed Harris and trying about Jackie O'Brien. No, Katie O'Brien. She plays Jackie, and Kristen Stewart plays Lou, who is this manager of this gym, and she starts a relationship with Jackie, played by Katie O'Brien, and Jackie wants to be the top of female bodybuilders. And she gets into a relationship with her, and Kristen Stewart's character has this father who's a crime boss, played by Ed Harris, wearing this wonderful bald headpiece that is just great and is very visually styling. And she's trying to get start this relationship with her, and I'm not selling this movie very well. I realized that because I only saw it once. But I was really kind of blown away by the visual storytelling of it, and it's just about her trying to get away from the crime her crime family that she's in and get involved with this other woman. I just thought it was very fun, and I really enjoyed it very much. I originally had at number 9 Kinds of Kindness, which I also like very much too, but I'm going to put Love Lies Bleeding just a little bit above that because I like the storytelling. It's brutal, it's violent, it's just great. I don't know if anyone here has seen this movie, but I
did. So I caught it at Sundance.
Okay.
And so went into it with like really knowing very little except that it's a Rose Glass film. And that was really all that's all they needed to sell it for most people. And so I think the storytelling is really compelling. It is brutal and violent, also surreal.
Very much so.
Yeah, there's a level of surrealism to it that is different, but also kind of on brand with Rose Glass. And I think one of the things that stood out to me is Kristen Stewart's performance. I don't think it's necessarily anything like super like exceptional or above and beyond for her. But I think that there are just moments that's just so Kristen Stewart. I remember there's something that happens unexpectedly to her, and her reaction almost sounds unscripted. She's just like, "What?" And I just remember laughing out loud so much because it was just so authentic, but also just in character for what she was doing. There are like nuggets of those moments with her throughout the movie. So yeah, there's a lot of great components to this movie.
And in the story, one of them gets involved in a crime, and one person's trying to help cover it up, but also the bodybuilder is still trying to, make her way to the top because she wants to try to get to Vegas to be this bodybuilder, and Kristen Stewart's character is trying to help cover up a crime that the other person committed, and now their father, who is a crime boss, gets involved with this too, and they have like this strange relationship going on. It is just wild stuff there, and it's not like anything you've seen before, it seems like.
Crime and bodybuilding. It sounds like something that ought to be served at Starbucks in a Trente cup.
It does, right?
All right, in my number 9 spot, I have one of those films that opened early in the year that should have been a huge hit, and it wasn't. It's one of those films that I think a lot of people anticipated, but also there was some controversy about because it doesn't really feature the character that the whole franchise is built on. I have Furiosa, which is a Mad Max saga.
Almost on my list there. Oh, that's a good one.
Well, I'm glad you approve. I was surprised that more people didn't seem to be enthusiastic about this movie. I think visually it is fantastic. It doesn't have quite the same cachet of practical effects that Fury Road had, because they did have to rely a little bit more, I think, on CGI to fill in some gaps here and there. But there is good use of practical effects, and the characters, I think, are developed well. For those of you who are unfamiliar, it's a prequel story for the character of Furiosa, who was introduced in Fury Road, but she's not played by Charlize Theron in this film. She's played by Anya Taylor-Joy, and I think she steps in quite well. There are actually 2 actresses. Actually, there might be a third, I'm trying to remember, who play the character at different stages. And the film is set in 5 chapters. I'm not sure how important all those chapters are, except they do kind of tell us the era in which this particular character operates in. And Chris Hemsworth is the main villain, although we do get a whole variety of additional villains in the story. But it's full of the same kind of insane action sequences and violence that you get in the Fury Road film and the previous Mad Max films. There's some great stunt work that's being done here, and I think the story nicely fits with it literally ends as the moments are starting in Fury Road, so it's nicely tied into that particular story.
Yeah, let me tell you exactly where this movie went wrong, because I got to the end of the movie and I'm like, I guess I enjoyed that well enough. But then they started showing the clips of Fury Road, and I was like, oh, that was a significantly better movie than this.
Yeah,
it's
from that other films of line too, where
just don't put the clips in the credits, and I walk away thinking, okay, that was a fine movie. But then they put the Fury Road clips in the credits, and I'm like, no, that movie was far and beyond better than this movie.
Yeah,
now I don't like this movie.
If I was ranking all of the Mad Max films, this would have been at the bottom of my list of Mad Max films. However, that doesn't mean that it was the bottom of this year's list of films. So that's my reason for putting it in that particular spot. But I know exactly what you're talking about.
I mean,
it's a movie that I plan to. I
think it's one of the problems that other films come where. I've definitely remember when I watched Babylon, where it does make an error of reminding people of a better film at the very end of this one, and you're thinking, I'd much rather watch the other film instead, like Babylon did it with Singing in the Rain, and this one does it with Fury Road. I think if it didn't have the Fury Road, because it's just that little bit too far. It ended at the right point, but it didn't need the Fury Road clips.
I'd agree with that. All
the
right.
movies I plan on revisiting, one of my good buddies, Donnie Roberts, got me the black and chrome version of Furiosa, so I'm very excited to watch that again in black and chrome.
Well, that'll be interesting. Tony, what's interesting on your list in the number 8 spot?
So, the number 8 spot, don't know I don't know how widely seen this was outside of the UK. or how much attention this got outside the UK. No, it's recently at the BAFTA longlist got quite a lot of films and consideration in there. So my number 8 is Kneecap.
Ooh.
Kneecap is good.
Oh, I do want to see this. Okay.
I'm actually, wow, guys, we're getting a lot of Sundance films on this list. I like it.
Yeah. So people that don't know about it, Kneecap, it's the story about an Irish language rap group. And interesting is it that the group plays themselves in the film. And when I heard that they were playing themselves, I was a bit wary about it because, like, the last time I can remember a film based on true events where the participants played themselves was Clint Eastwood's The 3:17 to Paris, and that film was destroyed by the people playing themselves because I don't know how people feel, but
they weren't actors or performers, right?
Yeah, they weren't actors or performers, and you can tell they weren't actors or performers. But with here, since they are stage performers, it works in this instance. And you have to see the chemistry that the group has with each other. There's like a cheeky sense of fun that they all have with each other that really shines through in the film. What was really impressive about it was that it was a lot more political than I thought it was going to be. A lot of it, the focus is on the importance of the Irish language as a political tool. And actually seeing it with Michael Fassbender's role in the film as a Republican who's on the run for his influence in the IRA and other revolutionary activities, and some really interesting, fascinating stuff about the importance of the language and how, with the era of British rule and the downgrading of Irish language as the actual recognised language of the country, it's sort of really interesting to see how important this language can be, and I'm not 100% familiar with politics in Northern Ireland and Belfast, so some of it may be lost on me. There were some bits that I did know, and it creates some really funny moments. Like there's a bit where the character who's like a Republican walks past an orange parade, and even though the orange parade are more the people in line of the support the Ireland's role as part of the UK, Northern Ireland's role as part of the UK, and you just, as soon as you just see all those people in orange, you know that there's going to be a fun scene coming up with how they interact with each other. And it also helps that the actual music of Kneecap is really great. Like, that Irish language fits really well in rap, and a lot of that's of the classic songs Kneecap have done, and some new ones that have been written for the film. And it's just, I just ended up having a lot of fun with it, and I'm thinking a little bit more about the current political state of Northern Ireland and basically how the political role of language.
Yeah, this movie was played at AMC theaters where I live, like, only one time in the afternoon, and then I was gone after like a week or so, and I was really pissed off that I did not get a chance to watch this because I saw a trailer at a few different screens of movies I went to, and I was like, all right, cool, I'm going to go see this, but it only came out when I was working, and I wasn't able to see that daytime. It only played for 1 week, so yeah, let's say it's right now, fuck you AMC for not playing much of this.
Well, I think maybe that then, don't know if it's better or worse than how a lot of people in the UK will have seen it, because it was shown as a secret screening for the Cineworld cinema chain.
Oh no!
So I'm guessing that'll be a lot of people who have seen it who had no idea that they were going to see it. And that would be interesting. People whose political bent isn't aligned with Kneecap. So that would be probably interesting. But also they mean that it's got a wider audience of people that probably would not have seen it otherwise.
Yeah, it is unfortunate this movie didn't get a wider release. Like I mentioned, this was another Sundance watch for me, and it was actually one of the more pleasant surprises at Sundance. I wasn't entirely sure what to expect from this one, but it's such a fun film, just super entertaining, and so I'm really happy I was able to catch it.
Well, I'm kind of expecting a Hard Day's Night and linguistic politics mixed together.
And I know in the UK it's currently available on Amazon Prime. Don't know if that's the case in in the US, but yeah, it is widely available to watch now in the UK.
Great.
I think it's on Netflix in the US. I'm not 100%.
Oh, okay.
Seems like it might be.
We'll look around and see if we can figure that out. Thomas, what you got at number 13?
Yes, all right, let me see. Number 13. We're back into the thriller genre. At number 13, I'm going to put Late Night with the Devil.
Pineapple Kiosk.
Ooh, nice.
Oh.
Oh, all right. Hold off. The synopsis: a live television broadcast in 1977 goes horribly wrong, unleashing evil into the nation's living rooms. Yeah, this was an interesting one, so we'll talk about it in a little bit.
Yep. Rishabh, what have you got at number 8?
All right, so I think at number 8 I have a movie that technically was part of the 2023 award cycle, but formally got released here in the U.S. In 2024. I also think it's one of the most slept-on movies of the year, whether you call the year 2023 or 2024. This is from a director who was, at one point considered to be one of the most, I would say, preeminent and influential filmmakers, or at least contemporary filmmakers for America. And this is director Ava DuVernay's Origin.
Oh, interesting. Mm-hmm.
Well, tell us about it and why you have it on the list.
So this is a really interesting movie, kind of unlike anything I've seen in the year, I would say. It almost feels like a work of nonfiction at times, just because it has such a journalistic and academic bent to it. But what this follows is Isabel Wilkerson, who's a Pulitzer Prize winning author, and kind of documents, somewhat dramatizes her journey in researching and penning this nonfiction novel called Caste, The Origin of Our Discontents. This novel was pretty famous, I think, a few years ago. And the movie opens with a pretty chilling, harrowing dramatization of the killing of Trayvon Martin and kind of sets the tone for the rest of the movie. But I think the thesis on which this movie operates is pretty interesting, and I think it'll be very unexpectedly interesting for audiences as they, start to seek this movie out. Because it really looks at discrimination in a way that most of us are not accustomed to thinking about here in the U.S. and maybe across the world, because it's a very academic kind of research-oriented way of looking at it. It goes through 3 different areas, 3 different geographical locations to kind of find, what kind of drives discrimination in our world. And it sounds very dry, and there are times when it is quite dry, but you're still interested. But I think what Ava DuVernay does as a director so well here is bring a sense of empathy and personality, because not only are we following this author who's going through her own personal grief, but we're also going through a lot of different anecdotal evidence of the argument she's making, and a lot of real events from history that I think add a lot of humanity to this movie. It's structurally very interesting because it has to balance the story of an author trying to write a book, but also, going through the subject of that book in a very detailed manner. So I think it is quite a lengthy movie, but coming out of it, I found myself surprisingly moved and really thinking about the different ideas and themes of this movie. So I highly suggest everyone check this one out.
Very cool. Yeah.
This is a very interesting pick. It's definitely compelling. When I saw it, I wasn't really familiar with the content, and so getting these ideas in this way and like the comparisons and everything, like it was certainly thought provoking. So much so that I kind of actually wish that it was just a documentary.
Yeah, we're beyond that.
Right.
Of course, it would be better as a documentary.
Yeah. I think it's definitely it's a very interesting subject matter. I would like to see another version that's a documentary. I think that would help really. I don't know. I guess the dramatization might have been kind of too on the nose in like the opposite way that Civil War was. Like this one is just like in your face about the horrific things, which is valid, but might be overbearing at times. So.
Vern, it's number 8 for you.
It is number 8 for me. All right, and I am picking the third part in one of my favorite horror trilogies of all time. I'm doing Matt Scene, the third part in the Ty West saga, starting with X and then Pearl, and then ended up with Matt Scene. I like Mia Goth very much in this. I think she is great. I know the story has some problems in the third act.
Exactly.
It does, but that does not take away my overall kind of enjoyment of the movie, and I think Mia Goth alone is just great in this. I like Giancarlo Esposito as her agent. I like Kevin Bacon as like the slimy guy who's trying to rob her of money and everything, too, trying to extort her and blackmail her. I like that very much. Yeah, I like the vibe of this. This has a very much like a Brian De Palma style vibe to it. I like the soundtrack, and yeah, I just had a lot of fun with this movie. And despite the ending going downhill, I still enjoy the movie. So yeah, that's why it's on my list, because I can enjoy this. It's not as good as Pearl. Pearl is like the best thing. I think Mia Goth is just fantastic in Pearl, but I still really enjoyed this because it's a continuation of Matt Scene Meets from her part in X, and I thought it was great. X is set in the 70s, got that sort of like Tobe Hooper aesthetic of 70s slasher films, and Matt Scene is a tribute to Brian De Palma and even some like Giallo features, which I enjoy very much. So yeah, it's on my number 8.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we had stopped right after the opening title sequence, this would be at the top of my list.
Oh wow, wow!
But the rest of the film was such a disappointment to me. I didn't dislike it, but I had loved the other two movies so much, and I had anticipated this for so long. I just felt let down by it, and I thought the opening was fantastic, and then it just went crash and burn from my perspective. So
fair enough. Fires with that.
I agree with you, Vern. It is definitely one of the coolest looking movies, which is what I would have expected from Ty West at this point. He's a very stylistic, confident director, but the storyline was just disappointing.
It's a good looking movie, but the plot is the problem.
Fair enough. I dug it.
Speaking of good looking movies,
I will also say this. It also has probably the worst Yorkshire accent I think I've ever heard in a film. I don't know what accent Lily Collins was trying to do, but it wasn't a Yorkshire one.
We're getting a lot of linguistic discussion this week. Well, a good-looking film that's out right now that the story is not original at all is number 8 on my list, and that's Nosferatu from Robert Eggers. I have not been a fan of Robert Eggers. I did not care for The Witch. I hated the Lighthouse. I thought The Northman was satisfactory. So I wasn't really enthusiastic about seeing this. However, the way it looked in the trailers drew me in, and when I was watching it, I said, I think I know what works here. The fact that he's not writing an original story, he's basically retelling a story that we already know. And some of the criticism that we had last week on the show when we talked about this film was that it's so familiar. You know, we're telling the same story over and over and over again. And I'm going, yes, but are we telling it well? And from my point of view, I think we tell it, Eggers tells it really well here. I was not irritated by the visual tools that he uses. Sometimes I thought they worked well with this particular material and the way the movie is structured. So, it's in theaters now. So if anybody's interested, go out and see that.
Yeah, this is one of the films that would have been on my list if it was out. But it came out on New Year's Day in the UK, so it just missed out being on my list.
I just can't get over Bill Skarsgård. Looks too much like Jim Carrey playing Dr. Robotnik. As like an older Dr. Robotnik, I just cannot get that image out of the head. The porn stash right there.
Is this the mustache?
The mustache, yep.
Book accurate mustache.
But let me ask you: is the prosthetic penis accurate?
I don't know. I was looking that close there.
Okay. Well, you don't have to get out your magnifying glass. It's front and center, as they say.
I was not paying attention at all. I will say Lily Rose Depp does a really great job in this movie. She's probably like my favorite part of this movie is her role in this. It just reminded me so much of like the Werner Herzog version, and even steals a lot from the Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula movie. That I wanted it to be its own thing because I really love The Lighthouse. I really love The Northman, and I was expecting something new and fresh to be put into this. And it's an okay adaptation, but at the end of the road, it just feels like very basic. And I feel like a lot of the actors are just overplaying it. It's like they're playing it to a theater. It's like a live theatrical presentation of Nosferatu, and I just wasn't vibing with it too much. I know if I see it another time, I can appreciate all the set designs and the makeup more. It just wasn't vibing with me at all when I watched it.
I think I look at Nosferatu because I liked the movie. I enjoyed the movie in the watching experience, but I think when I think about it, I'm really using it as a gauge for the direction of Eggers' career. He started with The Witch in the Lighthouse, very much small, independent films that are, by the way, fantastic, regardless of what Richard says. But then we get The Northman, which seems like his foray into more mainstream filmmaking. And I wasn't the biggest fan of The Northman, and so Nosferatu seemed like one more step into that mainstream space, and it was really a bearing to me on whether that's going to work for his style of filmmaking or not. And it did for me. I liked Nosferatu a lot, and it does give me hope that we can bring these independent cinematic sensibilities into mainstream filmmaking more.
Yeah, I think it's great for Eggers. I was going to say, I think it's great for Eggers, like, that he's been exposed to a wider audience now. And as someone who had championed The Witch and the Lighthouse in his early years, I'm glad that we finally got Richard onto the Eggers train. We all remember a few podcasts ago, I was fighting with him about the Lighthouse. I'm glad to have you here, Richard.
Oh, well, it just takes different attitudes to make a discussion, and that's what we've got here. We're going to take
and look.
Go ahead.
Look forward to this too, Richard. He is going to be remaking Labyrinth, I heard.
I heard something about that, and I'm not exactly sure how they're going to recast David Bowie, but we'll see when that movie comes out.
Easily, Richard. Tilda Swinton.
Oh, there's an option.
It's in the form of a prosthetic penis.
yes, it would be. Yes.
We're going to take a brief break here for a list from another Lamb member who wasn't able to join us. Chris Tansky from Fright Rags had sent me his list. In the number 10 spot, he had Long Legs. In number 9, Snack Shack, which I've never heard of. It sounds like it might be interesting.
Great movie.
Number 8 was Here. Number 7 was Will and Harper. Number 6, Deadpool and Wolverine. Number 5, The Wild Robot. Number 4 was Saturday Night. Number 3 was Inside Out 2. Number 2 was The Substance. And his number 1 film for the year was Wicked. Sorry that Chris couldn't join us this week, but we're going to continue our list of films for the people who did join us this week with the number 7. And that's Tony. It's your turn.
And the film with the most accurate title of the year. You said what you feel about other films. Only Hundreds of Beavers has Hundreds of Beavers in it.
Oh, this is my most anticipated movie to watch. I just haven't had time to watch anything, but I will watch it this week.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like. Okay, so yeah, this feels like a film that was tailor-made to me. Like over the past few years, I've been getting more and more into the classic silent comedies of it, aided by the Slapstick Film Festival in Bristol, which this year's one is going to be doing a showing of Hundreds of Beavers in the Bristol IMAX screen, which unfortunately the timings aren't right for me to go to, but I'm imagining that'll be a brilliant thing to see. Like you can see like all of the influences. You can see like Chaplin, Keaton, like classic Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, all them really on the sleeve here, and it's really like scrappiness of it in how it was made. Like you can definitely tell it's a low budget film, but it embraces its low budget and makes it part of its charm how lo-fi it is, like all the beavers or animals being people in obvious mascot suits, even like especially the horse, which is a pantomime horse, where you can see the person's head in it. And there's a lot of just really great bits of slapstick comedy. It even takes a lot of influence from video games. Like the second act of the film plays a lot like you're watching a let's play of a video game. And I mean, there are some parts where it does kind of drag a little bit, but when it gets the amount of visual invention in the comedy here, and how it, especially when at the ending, when it just goes all out with the slapstick and the visual imagination, it's just a great film to watch, and a great one to watch with a crowd. And like there's so many like great laugh out loud moments in it. It's creates some of the best comedy scenes of the year are in Hundreds of Beavers.
I've got to get this done. A dozen people have recommended this movie to me, and I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet. And every time somebody talks about it, I say, that just sounds like it was so much fun. Why am I not watching it now? I'm not watching it now because I'm doing the podcast now, but soon, I promise myself.
Yeah, very bizarre movie, but very interesting, and it's really a testament to the DIY spirit of this movie. Like the stuff they were able to pull off, the scenes that they did on the budget that they had, it's just crazy how creative it was.
Is a quick question, Tony? Is there dialogue in this, or is it all silent?
There are a few like intertitles at the in the second half of the film, a few like one word bits, but it's the vast majority of it is silent.
Oh, perfect.
Thomas, number 12 for you.
Yes, number 12. Let's get a documentary in here. Sundance puts out really good documentaries. Actually, two of my favorites went to Netflix, but the one that made my list is The Remarkable Life of Evelyn.
Honorable mention for me. This was so close to being on my list.
This movie is so good. It's about this guy Matt Steen who died of a degenerative muscular disease at the age of 25. But it really delves into how he connected with people through online gaming and having online friends. And it's such a heartwarming story, but also just a really interesting look at how he tried, like how he used gaming to try to find some semblance of a normal life, despite his muscular disease. And it's a very, very good film.
Sweet.
Nice.
No one else has seen it? It's on Netflix.
No, I've never heard of it.
Tony apparently saw it and has it.
I just Googled it.
See, I saw it, and yeah, it's a proper tearjerker. I was in floods of tears at the end of it. It just gets how important this online community can be, and how these communities can be created. And yeah, it's just, and I just really appreciate how it uses the World of Warcraft footage to give us a bit of more of an insight into how his life would have been seen through the screens.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I suppose if they ever write that documentary of my life, it'll be filled with clips from the Lambcast.
Nice.
Rishabh, what have you got in the number 7 spot?
So it's funny because number 7, incidentally, for me is also a documentary. This is actually strangely enough, kind of almost like a sequel documentary in some ways, which is kind of rare. In the sense that a few years ago, the same director made a movie called Boys State. Now, 2 years later, I should say, they have created a movie called Girls State. So a bit of context on this movie. This follows the participants of the 2022 American Legion Auxiliary Girls State. And just a bit of background on the program that is, it's basically you can think of it like a summer civics leadership program. It's for high school juniors. You participate in almost like a mock government, so kind of judiciary, legislative, also just in general debating, journalism, a lot of different simulations of democracy in one kind of event that takes place during the summer. As I mentioned, these directors made a similar movie called Boys State a few years ago, which was about the same program just for the high school boys. This one is about the high school girls. I think this one has gotten a lot less attention, although I think it's actually even more relevant and interesting than Boys State in some ways. Just because I think this is a really good almost litmus test or like a kind of microcosm look at the way that young people in America are currently, interacting and engaging with our state of democracy right now. And I think the fact that it's girls who are high school juniors talking about pertinent issues like abortion, gun rights, and a lot of things that affect, them very directly, but are being decided on Capitol Hill by, men who are twice their age. I think this is a really good look at, power back to the people in some ways. You get to hear from the individuals are most directly impacted by some of these issues. And I think the documentary does a really good job of capturing both the pros and the cons of this type of program, its flaws as well as its victories. And you get to follow a group of very, driven students who are, taking, I guess, the reins in their hands and trying to make history as maybe the next leaders of tomorrow, right? And I think it was a really interesting look at the political state of America, especially seen through the lens of younger people.
So really quick question. Do I need to
Yes.
watch Boys State first of all before I watch this one, or does it matter?
Not at
Okay.
all.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. I think that calling it a sequel was kind of misleading. I think it's just that these movies are so closely related, it almost feels like you're watching a sequel, but definitely don't need to see
It's a
them.
companion
Need
film.
to see it first.
Companion,
Yeah,
okay.
that's right.
Oh, sweet.
That's right.
Where's it streaming on again? Is it streaming anywhere?
Unfortunately, it's on Apple,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
I had it as part of the Apple free trial, but I do, suggest everyone seek this one out if they can.
Sure.
All right, Vern, before you get on Apple and watch Girls State, what did you have in your number 7 slot?
So my number 7 is probably the only other blockbuster, quote unquote blockbuster, that I have on this list, because all of the other quote unquote blockbusters did not work for me so much. This one got low ratings with critics, had low box office, but I enjoyed the hell out of it. I'm doing The Fall Guy.
Pineapple Kiosk.
Holy shit! Really?
Ooh.
Wow.
Yep.
Cool. Okay.
Nice.
Epic.
Yeah, we'll get to that one in just a couple minutes here.
Okay.
All right, well, my number 7 is The Wild Robot. Does anybody have it higher?
Pineapple Kiosk.
Okay, then we'll wait on that one. We're rounding around the corner to number 6. Tony, what's your number 6 film?
My number 6, and I'm pretty certain this is going to Pineapple Kiosk, is The Substance.
Yeah, Pineapple Kiosk.
We can move through these numbers pretty quick all of a sudden. Thomas, number 11 for you.
And I'll be happy if someone Pineapple Kiosk this one. But this is number 11. This is the one that just missed my top 10. I'm heartbroken I couldn't get it in the top 10, but I'm happy to talk about it here now. At number 11, I'm putting Red Rooms.
Say again.
Red Rooms.
Okay. No. Okay. Never mind.
Yeah, it's a French Canadian film, thriller about a person who just becomes overly obsessed with a high-profile murder trial. Has nobody seen this one?
No.
I've heard it being talked about, but I've not seen it.
Yes, and I think that is really the sentiment that a lot of people have experienced this movie in. Is like a lot of buzz about it. But I don't know how to better sell it except that it's such a thriller vibe film. I really appreciated the atmosphere here. Like I said, I'm going to use the word vibe a lot in these lists, but I really appreciated the atmosphere here and the approach to telling a serial killer story through the lens of just the average, the average serial killer enthusiast. I don't know if I want to call her enthusiast, but obsessive, yes, because she is. Yes, she's very much invested in this case, and it's just a really, really captivating movie. So I'm not going to say any more. I will say that the technicals of the film really captured my attention. It opens with a courtroom scene that has this really awesome one take floating through this kind of sterile courtroom. There's a lot about the technicals from the cinematography, set design, and all of those things that really works for me. And just has a really great vibe.
Thomas, I heard someone talk about this being almost compared to American Psycho. Like the character
Ooh.
is being compared to American Psycho. I don't know if you buy that or not.
You know what? I can see the thought process there. I can see
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm very intrigued to watch this one when it does finally come out to stream or whatnot.
You know, I wonder where it's at right now because this has actually been like in the cycle for a while. This it originally premiered in 2023, and just kind of filtered through genre festivals and even some regional festivals as well. So it like made the rounds. It's just one of those movies that you hear a bunch of buzz about and just like, but I don't know how to find it.
I've been to a few festivals, and I don't think I've seen this on there, though. But I live in the Midwest, so I don't know if we carry all the big films that come to other film festivals, so we'll see.
If I find a link for it, I'll put it into the YouTube video when it goes up.
Okay,
Mhm.
sweet.
Rishabh, what's your number 6?
Well, Richard, my number 6 had me feeling like a Rolling Stone.
Ah,
This is A Complete Unknown. Any Pineapple Kiosk?
No.
I've not seen this one yet, but I'm
Not
intrigued.
out in the UK yet.
Okay. All right, so I'll go through it. This is actually a pretty interesting take on Dylan. I think, first of all, this is an adaptation of a nonfiction novel called Dylan Goes Electric, which was written by Elijah Wald. It's basically following the events leading up to some things that happened at the Newport Folk Festival, where Dylan basically picked up an electric guitar at a folk festival and ruffled some feathers there. So, I mean, I think it's clear, like, it's pretty hard to adapt the life of Bob Dylan in any, conclusive way, just because he had such a layered life with so many different stories that you could just continue to go through. I think Scorsese did a pretty comprehensive documentary on him before, but I think this version is almost like a tribute to Bob Dylan of sorts. It follows his come up in the folk scene and then slowly some of his movement into more of a mainstream space, slightly more mainstream space when he started doing some of the most well-known songs that we know. Director James Mangold, who had previously done Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix about Johnny Cash, I think he was a perfect choice. I really can't think of a filmmaker who would have done a better job with picking up Dylan's life, just because it's a pretty challenging life to adapt, and you have to get just the right approach for it. And I think James Mangold did a really great job at giving a pretty perceptive look at a mostly reserved individual. Timothy Chalamet, obviously, goes without saying, did a fantastic job here, even though I was a little bit concerned when I first saw the trailer that it might be a little too imitative. But I think he really picked up very well on the overall, humanity of Bob Dylan and what he is as a person and the different contours he has. So overall, I thought this was a really great movie, and I just loved the one of the final scenes where Dylan actually picks up the electric guitar, and there's a whole lot of hoopla around, this change he takes on from folk to almost like a rock and roll sound. And I think that moment in the movie is really indicative of how Bob Dylan also shaped American culture at large. You think about moving from traditional folk sound to rock and roll. It kind of mirrored our own country's journey through to more bold ideas, new ideas that came with the new social wave at that time. So I think you'll also feel like a Rolling Stone. I definitely suggest seeing this one in theaters, big and loud, and I think it's a good time.
Yeah,
I
the
like
music
the
does
fact-
matter. The music does matter in a film like this, and it sounds great on a big screen in a theater. I also think that it was the right idea to focus on a short period of time in his life
Yes.
instead of trying to
Thank
do
you.
a complete coverage of his biography, and instead focusing on this pivotal event and what led up to his career. He's basically it covers his career as a folk singer and the transition to being a rock artist. When you put it in the context of the times, it's interesting because the festival that gets referred to here is 1965, so this is 2 years after the Beatles have arrived in the States. And believe me, rock and roll did exist, and it was alive and well, but what Dylan was doing was transforming part of the community, and it's an interesting story. It wasn't compelling enough for me to put in my top 10, but I liked it quite well.
Nice.
Very cool.
Vern, we're at number 6 for you.
All right, my number 6 is a movie that I like mainly on the sole performance. All right, and I'm doing Anora.
Pineapple Kiosk.
Okay.
So that'll be coming up again later. All right, well, that puts me at my number 6, and my number 6 is a film that was made for Netflix. It played on Netflix when it first opened, but the rule for my site is that I have to see it in a theater. I saw it in a theater, and I was lucky enough to see it in a theater with the 2 stars and the director talking about it live here in Austin, and that's Hitman with Glenn Powell.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my! Wait, this was a 2024 movie. I thought this was a 2023. That's why I didn't put my list.
Well,
it was definitely so. It premiered at TIFF in 2023, but then went to Sundance 2024, and then released on Netflix in June. Don't get me started on Hitman. I will be here all day talking about how much I love this movie.
Oh, good. I'm glad somebody else loved it too.
I would have put this on my list for sure if I'd known that, but I don't feel like an idiot now.
It's okay. Like I said, it's one of those weird amalgam kind of films where Netflix was playing it on their channel, but they did release it in theaters for at least a week and maybe 2. I'm not quite sure. It was not for long.
Let me tell you, there was a massive push for this. When it premiered, I think it premiered Venice and then played TIFF and I think New York, and all the festival people were like, this has to go to theaters. We were all really annoyed when Netflix picked up this movie, right? Very annoyed. So I think there is this really big outcry from the people who saw it at the festivals. This needs to be in theaters, and that's why Netflix ended up doing a limited run in theaters.
Yeah,
which I'm happy that they listened to us about that.
Yeah, well, they had it playing at the South by Southwest, and they had a premiere here with again all of the primaries involved in it. And when they released it in theaters and on Netflix, they were doing a promo at the Alamo Draft House, and we were fortunate enough to get I might have been the last 2 seats. I mean, we basically sat against the back wall, but it was great to hear them talking about it. And the film is entertaining as all heck. It's very funny. I like the resolution. It's basically a murderous love story, and how can you do better than that? And Glenn Powell is the co-screenwriter of the film. He did a lot to influence this film. This is based on a real event, a real person. They had to kind of add a story to it to make it work, but the basic concept of a guy who pretends to be a hitman as a sting operation, that was real, and this character existed 20 years ago. It was based on an article that appeared in the Texas Monthly, and Richard Linklater has been thinking about it for 20 years, trying to figure out how to get it as a film. And the talk we heard was very interesting, but the movie is very entertaining.
And I gotta say, Richard, that co-actress in this, Adria Arjona, I have never seen her before in anything, and I thought she was absolutely great in this movie.
She was very good.
Fantastic. The scene where he's communicating with her but showing her notes on what to say.
Yeah.
Y'all, we spent months talking about that scene, and before it came out, so when I went to see it again at Sundance, I'm telling you, the very first question the Q&A got was, tell us more about making that scene. Like, so many people went back to see it again at a festival because we didn't know if we were going to see it in theaters at that point. Netflix hadn't said about a release date yet. So many people went back to Sundance to watch that scene in theaters, and it got an applause afterward as well. That's
a great scene to watch with a crowd.
100%.
Tony, we swing around to you in the number 5 spot.
So this is number 5, and it's one of the films that was a 2023 release outside the UK, but was presented for in the UK. And that's The Zone of Interest.
Whoa, we get to talk about Zone of Interest?
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, probably not. I mean, this is probably not this is one of the hardest watches of any film I've seen this year. This is, and this is probably the closest I've seen to actual film showing evil that I've seen. It's such a deeply uncomfortable, unsettling watch. All of it aided by some incredible sound design. I was really pleased that this won the Oscar for Best Sound Design over Oppenheimer. I was predicting it would be Oppenheimer, but this was absolutely the right one to win. It's all just everything's in the background, all the most horror stuff in how it, all the sounds, all stuff in cinematography, all highlights what we don't see, we don't hear clearly, and it just does such a terrific and just deeply uncomfortable job at showing the conditions of what it'd be like for actually people working out Auschwitz, and how your people were able to push those horrific things that they're seeing, hearing into the back of minds. Even not really in the back of minds, that they're just happy to go along with it, that they don't see it as anything wrong, that they just see it as just a standard part of their life, that they're completely desensitized to it because it's just that evil, and that's just, they've got that stuck in their head that this is as it should be, and that's just what makes it just such a. That's why I'm saying it's the closest thing we get to see a true film depicting evil that I'm seeing. But then it's just how people are able to justify thinking that these attitudes, and now seeing how people justifying what we see as own interest in as and it's genocide, and it's just it is a brilliant film, but it's one of those films that I probably will never watch again because of how deeply uncomfortable it made me.
I only wish that we did not know that they were part of the Third Reich or Nazis until the very end, when the little boy is going into his father's work. That's my complaint about the movie, because the rest of it, it's just nothing much is happening. All right, these Nazis are living in this state house, and I'm seeing all these fancy parties and whatnot, and I know they're bad because I'm hearing the screams of the concentration camps, and that was it. There was not much more to it than that for me. Yes, the sound design was great, but I just was not into this feature because, oh my gosh, I'm just watching dinner parties of these people I hate. Why do I care about watching them? So, yeah.
It's so interesting because I think that's exactly the point. I remember first watching it and being like, well, I mean, what was I supposed to take away from it? But the more I thought about it, the more unsettling it was, even from when I was watching it. And it's because of all the things that it doesn't make explicit, like the conversation on the dock about him getting the promotion and needing to move. I'm like, this is so frivolous. You guys are living in this horrific place and wanting to stay here, and you just have to think those things while they're having this relatively frivolous conversation about this promotion. And that's what I love so much. All the things that I think about in hindsight of watching the film, and the things that aren't said or that aren't explicit, the sound in the background, the conversation, the dinner, how just.
How Sandra Hüller is kind of sit, and she's trying on the different coats, and out of context it's fairly innocuous scene. In context, those coats are from the people in the concentration camp. They're stolen. They're stolen guns,
exactly.
And that's what makes it horrific to watch. It's all what's not said that makes it so effective.
And I'm sure a lot of people, at least it was the experience for me, it's you sit in the theater and you think there's something wrong with the projection system in the first 5 minutes of this movie because it's just such an unorthodox, bold, and honestly impactful choice to start the movie the way it did. This movie will leave you shaken for sure.
Yeah, just a real quick story. So I was sitting next to a representative for A24 who was screening the movie for distribution for airplanes or something like that, right? And I hadn't seen the movie yet, so I don't know what to expect. But afterward, I'm like, I don't know how you're going to sell this to an airplane. I don't know how you're going to that the first couple minutes where it's just a black screen, how are you going to convince someone on the plane that there's nothing wrong with this movie right now when they turn it on? That's not airplane entertainment.
Well, Thomas, we're going to get off the plane and go to your number 10.
All right, number 10. Maybe we can talk about this one now. My number 10 is The Wild Robots.
I think it sounds like it's the high spot here.
All right. Yes, at least in our relative lists here.
Yes.
Yes. So when I saw this movie hit the TIFF lineup and saw Chris Sanders as the director and like figured that out, I'm like, this is going to be a fantastic film. You know, he obviously directed How to Train Your Dragon and has been involved with Disney animated movies, including Lilo and Stitch. And so, like, he has a great resume. I'm like, there's no way this movie can go wrong. And that's correct. This is such a fun, heartwarming film. It's adventurous. It has really compelling themes about coming of age and family and chosen family. The voice talent is fantastic. It's beautifully animated. I'm pretty confident that this will win the best animated film Oscar.
Well, I can't disagree with anything you've said about the film. I'm not sure about the predictions. I hear great things about Flow, so I'll have to wait and see how that's doing. But I prefer The Wild Robot to Inside Out 2, which I liked quite well, but had some of the same problems that I had with the original Inside Out. I know that there are people out there who love that film and would accuse me of blasphemy for not embracing it the same way they do. But I think they're both very satisfying films, but I think The Wild Robot steps up. The visuals on it are fantastic, and the concept is great. So I didn't have anything to add except that I'm enthusiastic about your recommendation here.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is how this number I listen. Yeah, I agree with what I said. The animation is absolutely gorgeous. I really like how DreamWorks with Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and now this has really been like stepped up their game with the animation, and it's making sure that's a shame that this is like the last film that's gonna be like in-house animated by DreamWorks, and so more like outsourcing now on, and maybe we'll get more films that embrace this style, but see what happens. Like all the voice acting is excellent from everyone involved. Like the Peter Nyong'o's great, Kit Connor, Bill Nye's got some great bits in there. Matt Berry's always fun to listen to, and yeah, the music is excellent, and it's just really like sweet, heartwarming story about parenthood and nature.
Yeah, I spent way more of this movie just like with watery eyes, way more of this movie than I thought I was going to. Like, it's not for me, it wasn't one of those movies where you get to the end and it's just like this tearjerker at the end. It's like the whole movie, I'm just welling up the whole time because it just does such a great job of curating these relationships between these characters, and it's so easy to bond with this film. And so, yeah, I'm just in the theater just like tearing up the whole film from joy of like how it's doing. And I don't know, as far as narratively, like for me it's actually kind of two narratives. There's the first half of the film, which is a coming of age story, and then the second half of the film that has more to do with family. And so it kind of switches the focus of the themes in the film, but both halves are still fantastically done, and I got to the end and was just so happy that I made time for that movie.
When I saw trailers for this movie, I really thought it would just go to streaming really fast. And then I heard all this praise about the movie, and it's one that I will definitely need to watch now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Rishabh, what have you got in your number 5 spot?
So at number 5 is where we will find Anora. I know someone else also had it, but I can start us off.
Okay.
First of all, Sean Baker is just one of the best, I think, American directors working right now. I'm convinced of that, and I think Anora is just further evidence of that. I still wouldn't say it's his strongest movie, but even Sean Baker, even when he's not at his strongest, he's still one of the best of the year, and definitely deserving of a top 5 spot. Obviously, he started with Tangerine, did Red Rocket, did Florida Project, and I think what he's very good at, and you can definitely see this in Anora, is which, by the way, won the Palme d'Or at the 2024 Cannes Film Festival this year, so won the top prize, is that Sean Baker's very good at basically taking something that in any other movie would have been this, big socio-political statement. It would have been this, dramatically heavy movie, and just flipping it on its head. And that's why I think Anora is one of the funniest, most uproarious, like, screwball comedies of the year. I know it's being touted as this prestige pick, which is that's a deserving tag as well to an extent. But I think a lot of people who have not seen the movie are going to be surprised at how absolutely hilarious this movie is from start to finish. It's definitely very satirical, but also very, very perceptive and empathetic toward its lead character, especially played by definitely, I think already somebody mentioned, breakout star Mikey Madison. I think she did a great job. And Sean Baker basically lets loose on the comedy in this movie. I think this is one of his most accessible comedy films in a way. It even has like slapstick moments. There's a wonderfully hilarious scene where Mikey Madison, who's playing Honora, is basically trying to escape the clutches of these people who have tied her up, and the way that she's trying to get out, and that whole sequence, the way it plays out, I think it's in some ways it's almost like a companion piece to Hundreds of Beavers, because it's just such a well-directed slapstick sequence, and the screwball comedy kind of continues without losing its grounded sense. Like there's all these scenes where they're trying to find this person. I'll try to stray away from spoilers, although I think a lot of people know about the movie already. They're looking for this person, and there's this bunch of characters who are from very, very different paths and walks of life, and they're all put together, and the way that they're interacting with each other and the repartee between them is just really, really funny. But Sean Baker brings it back full circle. I think he knows that even though this is a comedy, this is also a character-driven movie, and you really get a good sense of who Honora is as a person, and there's a very good satirical, almost cynical sense to the movie that doesn't lose its compassion. So I think for me, this is one of the best of the so-called prestige picks of the year. Definitely worth seeing, and I think you'll walk away loving a lot of these characters.
Vern, this was on your list.
It was. I've got this weird love-hate relationship with Sean Baker movies, because I remember first seeing The Florida Project and just hated all the characters in this.
No.
But hold on here. I was hating a lot of the characters. But at the end of the movie, I was crying. I love these characters by the end of it. And Sean Baker just has that ability to have a lot of these characters be like horrible people, but you kind of love them at the end. Honora, I loved her from the start. I loved everything she was in this movie. And this is Mikey Madison. I only first saw her in Scream 5, and she was the girl who got blowtorched in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And
it's interesting we've now got a film with Mikey Madison, but he isn't being set on fire.
But she's not herself being set on fire, but her character's being set on fire. In that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But I thought she was absolutely great in this. I love the fact you have this girl who is from California just doing this really great Bronx, New York accent, which I thought was absolutely just fantastic. The other side actors, Yuri Borzov, he plays the Russian bodyguard who's trying to find her husband, played by Mark Edelstein. And I think the most funniest moments in the movie are the Mark Edelstein and Mikey Madison's characters having sex. I think that's just absolutely hysterical. You talk about slapstick. That is where a lot of the slapstick comes in for me, is all the different set scenes, because it is just absolutely hysterical. I think this movie is great. Sold mainly on Mikey Madison's performance in this one. My top pick is Demi Moore, but I still think Mikey Madison may steal this from her, and I'd be totally fine if she did, because she is absolutely fantastic, and I just absolutely love watching her in this movie. There are some slow moments in the movie, and I know when I rewatched it again, that won't feel so bad. I do think the ending is powerful, kind of confusing, because after it ends, it just ends and that's the movie, and I kind of want there to be more. But there doesn't really need to be any more after the last sequence, and I don't want to spoil it because for people that have not seen it. But yeah, overall, I really enjoyed it. And I know that Criterion Channel right now is playing Sean Baker's other earlier films, Takeout, Starlet, and another one that I completely blanked on right now.
I would just add maybe two quick thoughts on the ending of this movie. I think Sean Baker, in some interview mentioned that he's very obsessed with endings for films. And I think if you really notice all of his movies, they're kind of the beginning of his movie and the ending of his movies are really just mirror images of each other, which I think helps to kind of interpret his films in a sense. So I think with Honora, that's also very clear, and the ending itself is open-ended, but the way he kind of juxtaposes it with the beginning is pretty interesting. So look out for that.
he also has this way of having his actors do scripted dialogue that feels like improv, which I find to be very cool thing about it.
Definitely.
All right. Well, we've just had a scoop of Vern talking, and we're going to have a double scoop because it's his number 5 spot.
Oh, crap. So my number 5, going back to my list here, I'm doing Challengers.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Luca Guadagnino's tennis flick with Zendaya, and I did not write the actors' names down.
Those other two guys.
And Mike Feist.
Well, thank you. And Mike Feist and Josh O'Connor, they play these two tennis pros, and they're kind of being pulled separately by Zendaya's character, who is also a tennis pro as well, and she seems to be kind of playing both sides of them in a way. She kind of feels like this femme fatale who is trying to. She's married to the she's married to Mike Foss character, and she's really trying to build him up to be this big, huge tennis pro. And I feel like she's trying to get these two together in a romantic sense and whatnot too. It's shot visually very well. I like the score from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. I like the fact that the tennis matches feel almost like really cool stage action sequences. It's just a lot of fun. I really kind of enjoyed this feature very much. I will say Zendaya has probably given their best performance since the show Euphoria, in my opinion.
All right. Well, I in a second it's going to come up again as a subject, but not on my list. On my list, on number 5, I think I have an outlier here. I have Horizon, an American Saga, Chapter 1.
Oh, interesting.
The Kevin Costner film. And let me tell you, I am so frustrated that the box office on this was not good enough that they could put out the second chapter 2 months later, which is ready to go and has still not gotten a release, and it's pissing me off. And I understand that there is production already in play on the third chapter. I don't know that they'll ever finish it. I don't know what's going to happen to the fourth chapter. They're going to probably turn it into a series someplace because they have a lot of product already. But I thought it was a very good Western with a broad scope about the settling of the West, but also with individual characters that are very interesting and compelling. And Costner, of course, is directing himself, so his character is front and center most of the time, but it's not exclusively about Costner's character, and there are a dozen other characters in the film that are just as interesting and take up a good amount of time. I thought this movie was excellent, and when I saw it, and I was disappointed that it was not as widely embraced as I would hope, so that I could get more.
Is it the runtime that put a lot of people off? I mean, this movie was like over 3 hours long.
I think people thought, well, this is just Yellowstone Part 2. And,
okay.
and they say, we've already got 2 other sequel series to Yellowstone. They said, I've had enough of Westerns and enough of Kevin Costner. I'm not exactly sure why. I have seen some criticism of the story suggesting that it's too long, it's lackadaisical in getting to the point, but I think the point is being developed really nicely, and it's supposed to have kind of a historical perspective on this. It's told from a variety of points of view, which I think also makes it very interesting. So there are good reasons to see it, but people haven't followed through on that.
No, and I'm in that camp. I want to support this film. I think a lot of things in theory I support here. Where did the production take place? Is this a Utah film?
I think it was Utah. That's right.
Yeah, wherever there's I think it's there's a push to make films outside of LA and the main hubs, and so I think this is kind of a part of that movement. Releasing 2 parts of a film in the same year, all about that. I would love to support that. But yeah, the runtime was a concern. And then the Western theme, I think it didn't. I haven't heard enough compellingness about the story to justify going out of my way for another Western, particularly one that is that long. I want to support it. I just have not move myself to do so yet.
I did see this one in the theaters. I also was trying to support this movie. I appreciate the ambition Costner brought. I did not like it. I think it was a little soapy for my tastes, but I had a friend who I watched it with who enjoyed it a little bit. So I think there is an audience for this, and that might grow as if we get a second part. So I think there's something here.
Eventually, that second part is going to worm its way into the zeitgeist somehow. I'm just not sure how it's going to work out. Well, before we move on to our number 4 films, let me give you another list from one of our lambs who couldn't join us, Matthew Simpson. He basically didn't rank any of his films except for his top film. And he gave us 15, so I'm not sure which ones he wanted to include. So I just randomly chose the ones for him. Matt has The Wild Robot on his list and Saturday Night, 2 films that we've talked about. The Substance, which apparently we're going to be talking about. Anita, which I don't know anything about. Dune Part 2, Conclave, Ghost Light, Civil War, which we've talked about, Blink Twice, and his favorite film of the year was Challengers. So,
ooh, good choice.
So it sounds to me.
He's
like
one of the smart ones.
Yeah, there you go. Well, Tony, we're back to you. What's your number 4 film?
So my number 4, this one I think maybe Pineapple Kiosk is Dune Part 2.
Yeah, Pineapple Kiosk. So we'll come back to that one in just a couple minutes here. Thomas, how about you? You got a number 4 film?
Yeah, you know what? You actually very briefly mentioned it earlier while I was talking about The Wild Robot. And I think because I watched both of these in such close succession, and they're both really, really great animated films. I did prefer this one. I mean, The Wild Robot is exceptional. Definitely watch it. But I think the I don't know, innovativeness of this other animated film just really impressed me. And so my number 9 is Flow.
Pineapple Kiosk.
Oh, dang it.
Sorry.
Not dang it. I'm happy it's higher on your list.
We'll come back.
We'll come back to it.
And that's going to be number 9. I got to write that down, so make sure I get it in the right spot. Making me do extra work here. Rishabh, what's your number 4?
So my number 4 is a movie that I'm surprisingly passionate about. I did not expect to be passionate about as I was walking in. And it's basically taken my life for a turn because every time I bring it up in discussions, everyone thinks I'm going insane, a little bit at least, because this is the year that we had movies like Flow, we had Inside Out 2, and I did not get to The Wild Robot, I will admit that, but for my money, this is the best animated movie of the year. This is Transformers 1.
Oh.
I don't expect any chaos on this one. But for me, having not seen Wild Robot, of course, this was the best animated movie of the year. I walked into this movie with absolutely no expectations, no preconceptions, or any hopes that this would be any good. I mean, obviously there was like good scores around this movie and had been getting some good acclaim, but I think a lot of movies get that and they don't quite hit for me. But this one I sat down and I was just blown away by how powerful this movie was, surprisingly. And it's surprising because, this is an IP animated movie. You don't expect it to be very good, but the storytelling and the characters were so rich, compelling, and layered. And when I say this, people really don't believe me that what I'm talking about is Transformers 1. But I remember I sat next to my sibling for this movie and I turned to him and I was like, why is this movie cooking so much right now? Like, why is this so good? But there's something very pure and sincere about this movie that I think is missing from a lot of mainstream films right now. There's something that is also very layered about it. I think when I walked out of this movie, and I saw it twice in theaters, the way that the characters were written was surprisingly complex and dynamic, and you get to see this friendship to feud story between Optimus Prime and Megatron, which is extremely well written. The movie feels surprisingly larger than life as well. It's only about 2 hours long, but when you walk out, you will feel like you've seen almost like an epic film. The visuals, I think, I like the visuals. I don't think they're like the most top-notch animated visuals of the year, but I think there were some moments where it looked really good. The humor was also hitting throughout the whole movie. The story it had a lot of interesting themes and subtext to it. I think there was a lot of political, moral, social elements to this movie, which is going to catch people off guard if they, decide to seek this one out. But yeah, I'm gonna say this is one of the biggest surprises of the year, and I feel I feel unapologetic about having it at number 4.
I love it. I love it because I know that the Michael Bay movies have had such a bad taste in their mouths
Right?
about Transformers.
Yeah.
And then we have Bumblebee, which is really, really good. And so I'm so happy to hear this being number 4 on your list. And I've been listening to other shows, and my nephew's a big fan of this movie, and he says, it's not what you're expecting. It's totally not what you expected. And I'm like, totally excited to see it. I hear it gets dark in some places, which is really kind of odd for a kid's film. But yeah, I'm loving your praise about this movie, and I will go watch it because I think it's on Paramount Plus, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think that's where it would be. Yeah.
So yeah, definitely look forward to watching this one. So thank you.
I must have seen it.
When I watched it, I really enjoyed the political side of it. It's like Brian Tyree Henry really nails his performance as Megatron. He's brilliant in it, and I'm glad they got the Annie nomination for Best Voice Performance. For me, though, the thing that really held it back was the comedy. I found Keegan-Michael Key so annoying in here as Bumblebee, and that's what just took me out of the film and stopped me from liking it anymore.
That is fair. That is fair.
I saw the trailer for this a dozen times, and I kept thinking that might be a good movie to see. It had a strong Wicked vibe to it, as far as I could tell. It really looked like it was kind of
see that.
A reconstruction of the origin story. So I'm not discounting it. I'm sure it's great, and you are certainly entitled to put it anywhere on your list, because when you get some of the stuff that I put on my list, obviously, who am I to judge? Vern, what have you got in the number 4 spot?
All right, my number 4 is a movie I did not think would be in my number 4, but now it has been, and it is my favorite, maybe my favorite Christmas movie next to Eyes Wide Shut. I'm doing Baby Girl, directed by Helena Regin, who just a few years ago made Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. This one stars Nicole. Wait, did I hear a Pineapple Kiosk?
No.
Nope, just said yep.
Okay, all right, fair enough. This one stars Nicole Kidman as this boss of this big power-up company. I guess it's Amazon-like type company, who starts a relationship with a young intern played by Harris Dickinson, and they have this sort of BDSM power dynamic, the sub-dom relationship going on. Antonia Banderas plays Nicole Kidman's husband. I found this movie to be very intriguing because you think that this is going to be kind of a thriller aspect with the young boy becoming obsessive, but that's not where the movie goes, and I appreciate that very much. And yeah, I just had a fun time with this movie. I don't know. Seeing Nicole Kidman learn to squirt was just absolutely just great, and I really wish that this I did not see this in AMC theaters, but I really, really wish they would have played that Nicole Kidman's, ode to movies before this.
They don't play it.
Which is weird. I know, and I wish they would have, because this movie begins with Nicole Kidman having an orgasm or having sex, and I'm like, oh, I wish they would have played her doing the whole movie spiel and then hearing her orgasm sounds, which just have been just epic. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this movie. A lot of people are going to feel very uncomfortable when watching this movie. I saw it at a pretty packed theater, and people were feeling tension and nervousness when the set scenes are coming on. And I'm laughing out loud because I think it's extremely funny. So yeah, I'm a weird one, but I really had a lot of fun with Baby Girl. And it's also a heartwarming, sincere Christmas movie as well, about this marriage couple who are having problems with their marriage, and they learn to come together, literally and figuratively.
The marketing for this movie, I mean, the fact they opened it on Christmas. It's movies like this that I just want to go to just to see who brings their kids, or who brings their grandparents or whatever to this for a fun holiday film. I don't think it's as racy as it could have been.
Sure.
But I do. If you're in a packed theater, there is some discomfort there with some of the scenes that do happen. And yeah, great performance from Nicole Kidman. I think what I appreciate most about this movie is the irony of her being the boss, CEO, in charge of a lot of things, but having a kink of wanting to be dominated.
Yes.
That irony is probably the highlight of the film for me. And I think it's executed well. It's executed well enough. Like I enjoyed the film.
I take a minute just to say, if you liked Baby Girl, I think there's a movie that's similar, but in my view at least, a little bit superior, which is last year's Fair Play. That was actually a directorial debut, so definitely check that one out.
I will look for that one. I've never heard of this one, Fair Play. So thank you.
Fair Play is that's a good comparison.
Well, okay, I've got a whole bunch of recommendations for you if you like Baby Girl. Deep Throat, The Devil and Miss Jones,
Saw that.
Debbie Does Dallas.
I saw those.
Sanctuary.
Baby Rosemary.
Oh, I love Sanctuary.
Just a whole bunch of porn is better than this film. This is the biggest pile of crap I saw all year long. I hated this movie. I hated this movie. It was annoying. Is all heck. And the discomfort is not about the sex. It's about the relationship between the two. And it felt demeaning to me every time in the first half of the film that she feels that the only way that she can get satisfaction is by submitting to some capricious bullshit that this guy comes up with. And I just thought, you know what? Anybody who gives a damn about the depiction of women on screen, who sees this and thinks that this is a good film, is missing something important here. Vern, I'm not accusing you of being loathsome. I know you have odd taste, and it's perfectly fine.
Yes, I do have odd taste.
But, and as evidenced by the fact that you've got a couple of films on your list that I would have had on my list, and one that we're still going to be talking about here in just a second. But this is a movie that I would steer people away from every day of the week, and I went and saw it on Christmas Day, so I'm one of those people that you're talking about. I went and saw it before we had our Christmas morning, as a matter of fact, because we went to an early screening, and I saw that and I said, this finally makes my Christmas screening of The Hateful Eight feel really good.
Oh, ouch.
I love the Hateful Eight, but it was not an appropriate Christmas Day film, and this one was even less so. So
you gotta watch it after Eyes Wide Shut. You gotta do Eyes Wide Shut, and then you gotta do this.
Fortunately, I didn't see Eyes Wide Shut on a Christmas Day. Thank goodness. Well, my number 4 is something that Vern raised. We had a Pineapple Kiosk because of it, and that's The Fall Guy, which was the most entertaining film I saw all year long. This is a movie that shoots for pure entertainment. It's got plenty of humor, lots of action. It's got stars in it that are appealing. Emily Blunt steals the damn movie. She is so fantastic in this. And it gets bonus points for featuring a Kiss song at the very beginning and throughout the film. So from my point of view, that adds, 5 points to it just like that.
It's such a love letter to the stunt community as well. And I even love that at the end of the movie, they're showing all the stunt characters.
Stunts and the work that they did,
Is absolutely just great. You mentioned Emily Blunt. I think Hannah Waddington is also very good. I also really like Aaron Taylor Johnson. I like him more in this than I did Nosferatu. So I will say that right now. I thought he did a better role in this movie than Nosferatu. Yeah, just obviously fun. Everything you mentioned. I love the different versions of that Kiss song, I Was Made for Loving You.
Yeah.
Like the orchestra version. They have like tones of that song being used. There's like the orchestra action version, and then there's the sad version as well. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this movie. Just absolutely fun from the start to finish. Ryan Gosling just has just great chemistry, and I don't know why this movie didn't do as good as I thought it should have, because I was just laughing the whole way through.
Yeah, the same thing that I've said about a couple of these films. I'm surprised that they didn't do better, but you know what? They were marketed to me perfectly, so I'm glad that I saw it, and I've revisited it 2 or 3 times since then.
Now, only if there was a scene where Ryan Gosling made Emily Blunt squirt and that it died
there you go.
I would have loved this movie even more.
The fingering scene is in the outtakes. I'm sorry. Tony, let's get to your number 3.
Okay, so my number 3 is I Saw the TV Glow.
Okay,
Pineapple
talk to
Kiosk.
me about this movie.
Oh, it's Pineapple Kiosk.
Oh, it's Pineapple Kiosk?
Yeah.
Yep.
So we'll
We
be
have to
talking
wait
about
for
it
it.
in a couple minutes here. Thomas, what's
Yes.
your number 3?
Number 8, because I'm keeping you on
Oh,
your
that's
toes.
right, number 8. Excuse me. I forgot.
No, number 8. I am going with A Real Pain. I had so much fun with this film. I think that the awkward dynamic between Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin is great. I'm really rooting for Kieran for the Oscar for supporting actor here. I think that it was just a really unique dynamic, a really fun dynamic. And as a directorial debut for Jesse Eisenberg, it's really promising for him as a filmmaker. And yeah, it's just I had a lot of fun with the film. And I think that it was definitely, again, it was one of those nice surprises for how much I enjoyed it at Sundance.
Minor correction, not his directorial debut, actually. I think
Oh,
it's a
shoot.
misconception. Yeah.
My bad.
He did When You Finish Saving the World, maybe one other one, but
I'm sorry,
yeah.
You're right. He did do When You Finish It, so this is his sophomore film. You're right. Sorry about that. But I also like. I think When You Finish Saving the World was a good introduction for him. It wasn't my favorite film, but it was like, okay, there's something here. And this, now that thank you for correcting me on that.
Yep.
All right, Rishabh, you're in the number 3 spot, not the number 8 spot. What have you got in number 3?
So number 3, we were talking about Christmas movies, and this is a movie that I first went to see near Halloween time when it first came out, and then it was re-released in time for Christmas, so I went for Christmas Eve. Definitely not everyone's favorite Christmas movie, but I will say I'm convinced, and I in fact challenge all of our listeners to try and convince me that this isn't the year's best Christian movie. This movie is the year's best Christian movie. This is Terrifier 3 at number 3.
Oh, nice. This almost made my list, Rashad. So thank you so much for putting this on here.
Of course, yes. So I think when the first one came out some years ago, obviously, director Damien Leone made a very, very indie movie with a character that he wanted to play with from a previous movie as well. But then he took it and blew it up in Terrifier 2, which was also one of my favorite movies of that year. And in Terrifier 3, it's pretty interesting because I think the second one was a lot more expansive and epic, but here it's much more concentrated and a little bit more serious in some ways. At least for the character, the main character, which is played by Lauren Lavera, which is Sienna Shaw, who's like probably the best scream queen, move over Mia Goth of the year.
Fair enough.
In terms of I think everyone just talks about the violence in this movie, which is of course like the kill scenes are great and all of that is fantastic. And there's a fantastic cold open, which I think got a lot of attention. And because everyone always talks about just the graphic nature of these movies, I think it takes away from the artistic merit of it as well. I think beyond just the fantastic, the way that Damien Leone creates those kill sequences, but beyond that also there is a very compelling and tightly crafted story here, which is actually, and I'm convinced of this because there's so many symbols throughout the third movie, especially, which is set during Christmas time, is a really good biblical allegory. I think a lot of people who, would be upset by this movie would not realize that this movie does have a biblical allegory to it, because it really is a story about the battle between good and evil. And you can see director Damien Leone always has that moral compass throughout the movies, but especially in Terrifier 3, because we get a very good look at Sienna Shaw's character, the trauma she's been through in the previous movie, and the way that she kind of musters up the strength to face this great evil again. Just a fantastic slasher movie. Definitely, if you love gory, violent movies, this is great. But also, I would give this one I would urge everyone to give this one another look for its artistic merit as well, because it's such a compelling story about good versus evil, and it does have that moral compass. No matter what, the violence may go to like an extreme level, there's still this moral grounding to the movie, which I think helps give it a lot of narrative compellingness as well. And of course the performances are great. I mean, David Howard Thornton as Art the Clown is like iconic at this point, I think, at least within some niche circles. So I would say give this one a look. I would also caution, it's not for everyone, of course, but I would say if you can, take take a good look at this one. I think there's more than meets the eye.
Well, speaking of Art the Clown, we now have Vern speaking on his number 3 film. What are you going to terrify us with?
Well, I just want to make just like one small comment about Terrifier 3. And I think director Damien Leone is good for doing the gore sequences, but he also is really good at a lot of like, visual comedy sequences. The moment where Santa Claus meets those guys at the bar is just great. Just a lot of great comedy.
So good.
In that one as well. And I like the fact, too, that he knows when to show gore and when to have it implied. So the beginning sequence, there are some kills that are just done off screen, and it's perfect just to hear it rather than see it. And I think he chooses his gore sequence parts very well. So, just want to add. And with that, with Terrifier 3, my number 3 is a movie that I think definitely me and Thomas can talk about, and that is Flow.
Let's talk about it.
All right, really want to put this on my list, but it's ineligible for me.
Flow is a movie that I was not expecting to like at all when I first watched it, because it's an animated movie about a group of animals surviving a flood in their town, and it's told completely with no dialogue. And there's a little bit of a story there, but I was totally into this movie because you have a cat and a dog and a stork bird of something. There's like a beaver, and they're all trying to survive on this boat. And the animation has almost this like painting quality to it. I can't describe exactly what to call that animation, but it just feels very fluid, almost like rotoscoping, but it's not rotoscoping. It's just very good, and it's very profound. And there's elements where these animals have to deal with maybe their own death in this too, and there's just all these different groups of animals getting along with each other and how they can solve different complex things. I know this movie won't appeal to most people. When I described this movie to my family at Christmas one time and said it's great, but there's no dialogue. My brother-in-law's like, I'm out, I'm done. Nope, not seeing this one. So it won't appeal to everyone, but I absolutely just fell head over heels in love with this movie.
Yeah, it's a hard one to pitch. When I was trying to tell my husband, because I think my husband would actually really like this movie. But I'm like, oh yeah, a bunch of animals in a boat while it floods and no one talks. It's kind of a hard sell. But there is, what I said is that without dialogue, the movie relies a lot on other components to bolster the entertainment, because it is a really funny movie. There's a lot of comedy to it, and I think that has a lot to do with what we know about animals and how they behave, and then putting those behaviors on a boat and having them interact with each other. The way the lemur behaves conflicts with how the cat lives. The dog, rubs the cat the wrong way sometimes because of its playfulness, and the cat's kind of so like all these things that we know about how animals kind of behave generally, it makes for really great comedy in this setting.
I'm loving it so much that movies like Hundreds of Beavers and Flow are on our list, and these are movies that are told strictly with like visuals and not too much dialogue. I love that.
And a bit of a spoiler alert, it's not going to be the last animated silent film that comes up on the list. Flow, Flow only comes out in 2025 in the UK. I saw it at the London Film Festival. This would have been on my list if it was eligible, and it's going to be on my list for top 10 for next year. I'm pretty much certain, almost certain of that.
Perfect.
The animation is like excellent in here, and it's compared to other silent animation films, there's no real sense of anthropomorphism with the animals. They behave like animals. But even with that, you kind of, I don't know if it's the same for you, but you kind of create the dialogue in your head. At least I did when I was watching it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, pretty much anybody with pets probably creates a dialogue for their animals. So it would be easy for somebody to watch this film and think exactly, here's what the dog is thinking, here's what the cat has got in their head. I don't know about the lemur, but it sounds like it would be a lot of fun. And it's a film I'm looking forward to because a lot of people are recommending it here at the end of the year. And I think Tony will be talking about it again a year from now. So we'll stop there. My number 3 film is also on Rishabh's list. It's Juror Number 2, the Clint Eastwood film. I thought that this was excellently made film. It's exactly the kind of film that Clint Eastwood is noted for. I do think that there are story problems, but that's the scenario that gets set up. It's the problems that the film has have to do with what the premises are in the story, and I think there are a couple of problems there. But regardless of those premises, the film is executed extremely well. Nicholas Hoult is very good in his role as Juror Number 2, conflicted about what the best thing to do is, finding himself between a rock and a hard place, trying to find a solution that's going to be satisfactory both for him morally and for the person who's on trial. I think and Toni Collette plays a character who is equally conflicted between what is the right thing to do and what is her job. And I think that this movie kind of explores those issues. And this is a movie that was made by grown-ups for grown-ups. It's worth watching. It's very interesting, and it pisses me off to no end that Warner Brothers basically orphaned the film. They released it in 35 theaters around the country. This is Clint Eastwood, who has been maybe their biggest box office star for the last 40 years, and they treated this film like it was some Netflix film that they were just screening for Academy consideration and had no thought that an audience would come out for it. We'll never know because it just didn't get the kind of promotion and exposure that it might well have gotten. I like this film very much. Rishabh, you also had it on your list. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, that's right. I had it at number 10. I'd echo your sentiments totally, Richard. I was lucky enough to catch this in the theater. But I think the fact that, Clint Eastwood, the guy who's kind of an icon in American cinema, and he was like America's cowboy at one point, making a movie that, brings up tough moral questions about American identity, about our judicial system, and just about human morality overall, I think is pretty interesting. That, he would bring up a movie about justice the way it is today. And the movie really makes you kind of stew in the uncomfortable moral questions of it, right? It does not spoon feed you the correct answers. Instead, it's surprisingly reflective. It makes you reflect on your own thoughts on the situation, how you might have acted, how the characters are acting. So I echo your thought, Richard, about it being, by grown-ups for grown-ups. It definitely doesn't do the spoon feeding that we're seeing in a lot of movies these days. It really lets you, feel the spikiness of the entire situation and tackle it in the way that you feel as a viewer is the right way. I mean, it doesn't give you an approach or an angle, which I really appreciated. So I appreciate Clint Eastwood making this movie a lot.
Well, in case anybody hasn't heard my rant about this before, I live in the Austin area. This movie did not play in the Austin area originally the first week. It played in Dallas, which is 200 miles north of me. I drove 200 miles to see this movie and then drove 200 miles back. So 3 hours up, 3 hours back so I could see the damn movie. Of course, the week after I did that, it did open in the area.
Oh, no.
But it didn't bother me that I had done that. I had a good time taking the road trip. But that's how important it was for me to see what possibly could be Eastwood's last film. I hope that he keeps working. He's 94 years old, is it?
That's impressive.
So, he might very well have another film or two in him.
Is it the title, Richard? Because people see Juror 2 and they're expecting to see Juror 1.
Yeah, they say, I can't see Juror Number 2. I haven't seen Juror Number 1. Yeah. That's like the Madness of King George III. They say, oh, no, I didn't see the Madness of King George I or the second. Tony.
That's why they changed the title.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Tony, what have you got in your number 2 spot?
So my number 2 is another one I saw at film festival, this time at the Edinburgh International Film Festival, when that thankfully returned after being shut down for a few years. And so my number 2 is Sing Sing.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, not only one of this. So the film follows like a group of prisoners in New York Sing Sing maximum security prison who were involved in the rehabilitation through the arts theatre program. And a lot of film just focuses on the prisoners putting on a play, which this weird, wild, daft comedy like gladiators, Hamlet, pirates, like Treasure Island, time travel cowboys. And a lot of the film is just seeing all the prisoners find a sense of release and respite from their time, from the general prison life through the arts and the program, and how it helps with them, like, in a sense of rehabilitation, in some sense, and it's finding a way to disconnect and a sense of like hope in their life. And like that was really interesting to me because when I was at university, one of the courses that I did was the geographies of incarceration and the control that prisoners have over the spaces in that in prison. And this really, like, it feels me interested in that, like, that side of my brain, and really about some memories of that, and being how the prisoners create the theatre space to like have at least a section of the world that they have complete control over in an environment when they are controlled at every other time. The performances are all excellent. Coleman Domingo, like, there's another excellent performance from him. I hope he gets the Best Actor nomination. Clarence Macklin, great here. Really hope he gets the Best Supporting Actor nomination. And also with Macklin and a lot of the other supporting cast. When the film ends and you see over the credits, about 3/4 of the cast are people playing themselves. They were former prisoners who took part in the actual rehabilitation for the arts program. We see the footage of the play that was actually done in real life shown over the credits. It ends up it's like a really hopeful ending to me. This is really like touching, endearing. It's really funny, moving, and yeah, I'm disappointed this didn't get more attention when it was first released. Hopefully, now it's the Oscar season and it's getting some more buzz, more people end up watching it. But yeah, I absolutely loved it when I saw it, and I'm glad that not only just able to see it instead of that, I went out of my way to watch it in the cinema twice.
Yeah, this is a good movie, but it's tough as far as exposure, because when this movie premiered at TIFF last year, not 2020, 2023, I remember that there was talk about Coleman Domingo for an Oscar nomination for this role, except was it Rusin? Was that the movie that was out at that time? So like, essentially this movie was kind of shelved until later on this year, so that there could be a proper Oscar run this year. And I think that they're trying for it. It did a whole bunch of film festival exposure. And we talked earlier about the cast in Kneecap playing themselves and being really good. I think Sing Sing is another example of casting people to play themselves and them being really good at it. And on top of that, I saw this film at the Seattle Film Festival where they brought a lot of the cast. And let me tell you, those guys are built-in marketers. During the Q&A, they did such a great job talking about the program and the importance of it. And in fact, the movie at the Seattle Film Festival had only one screening. And there were plenty of movies that had 2-3 screenings. But with that one screening on the last day, the film still won the audience award. And I think it's because of the Q&A and hearing the guys talk about their experience with the program and in the film. So it's definitely a powerful film. Very well done. Coleman Domingo, definitely. I would love to see him get this nomination. I mean, I'd love to see him with an Oscar at some point.
Is this a really rough movie to watch? Because when I heard the concept of it, saw trailers, I'm like, is it just going to be all like sadness in this movie, or is there like?
Not really. No, it's as I'm saying, it's really funny. Like, there are a few more grounded bleak moments, but a lot of it is really funny.
Okay, all right. I'll give this one a shot. I heard about the concept of the movie. I'm like, something's gonna go wrong. All right, yeah, and I just wasn't.
I think you guys have sold it to me better than the trailer did.
Yeah, that's true.
Thomas, number 7.
Yes, number 7. Here we go. I just rewatched this again the other night, and I love watching this movie. This was actually quite the surprise. In fact, when I was at TIFF, I almost skipped it because I didn't know enough about it, but ended up skipping a different film to get to this screening. And my number 7 is Heretic. I think that I like thought-provoking movies. I like movies that have narratives that really make me think and question and engage with it on an intellectual level. And I think Heretic does exactly that without pushing an agenda for each side. So essentially, the premise of the story is two young religious women. They visit someone to talk about their faith, and he invites them in, and it's it kind of gets wild from there. It's a horror film, thriller film, kind of a mystery, but essentially the movie is spending a lot of time going back and forth about the merits of religion, and the validity of religion, or the invalidity of religion, based on the fact that there's a thesis that religion is just a bunch of iterations of other ideas. And when I see a movie and it makes a promise, I really expect it to live up to that promise. And I think Hugh Grant, by the way, incredible performance here, really, really good. The Hugh Grant's character kind of he toys at an idea throughout the movie, and he said he's kind of working us to this idea, and I really impressed when we got to the reveal of that idea. I was like, okay, that actually lives up to meeting the unexpected answer that I was hoping would be somewhat satisfying. So it's definitely it's a debate in a lot of ways. There's definitely debate back and forth, pro-religion, anti-religion, and each person defending their side. But what I think this movie does better than traditional debates is really keeps the audience engaged and not alienates anyone. It's very smart in how it delivers the ideas on both sides, and the movie is incredibly entertaining and also very creepy and will appeal to horror fans for sure. But it's just such a smart script with great performances. It's very entertaining. I am so happy that I chose to. This is one of those decisions I made at a film festival that I will never regret, and that I'll always look back on and be like, that was a good decision to get to.
Good.
This is a movie that I actually went to go see, but I had to walk out because when the movie first started, the soundtrack was so garbled and I could not hear anything. So I had to leave and I could not hear anything going on, and I had a chance to go back and see it, and now it's gone. So I'll have to wait until it's on streaming now. But
all right, guys.
I saw this one. It's a cool one.
Okay. By the way, Heretic falls apart in the third act, but up to that point, I liked it quite well.
Magic underwear, dude.
Yeah.
I love that line.
Rishabh, what have you got in your number 2 spot?
All right. At my number 2 spot, the movie comes from a country which has really only 4 working directors right now, which is pretty interesting. Again, this movie technically was more of the 2023 award cycle, got a U.S. release in 2024, very handful of theaters, so not sure if everyone got to see it. It's called The Monk and the Gun, and it's a movie that comes from the country of Bhutan, from director, hopefully not going to butcher this, Paolo Chunying Dorji. He's one of the preeminent and only filmmakers from that country. But it's a very funny, almost Sean Baker-esque satire, which is a very good and telling indictment of just overall Western political ideals. It's a pretty funny movie because you have a country which is learning to embrace democracy, but also resisting it in some ways, which I think is a very interesting angle for a lot of audiences in the West, about how this country is trying to modernize its political systems, its economic systems, but also learning that no system is perfect and might not be one size fits all. So in the spirit of keeping it brisk, I would just say definitely one that was underrated and worth checking out if you can find it. Should be available to rent somewhere, so definitely check this one out.
Intriguing. Vern, how about you for number 2?
All right, well, my number 2 is a movie that I believe Thomas mentioned. It is Strange Darling.
All right.
Yes, let's talk about it.
Or let's not talk about it. All you need to know about this movie, right, Richard, or people have not seen this movie, it's a thriller told in like 6 or 5 chapters, and you think it's going to go one way, and then it completely subverts and changes where you think the story is going. J.T. Mulder does a great job with this film. Cinematographer is Giovanni Ribisi, which is very different and odd, but I enjoy that very much. I forgot the cast members. Thomas, tell me about who's in this.
Oh, yeah, what are the names? Hold on. Let's go back up to my notes. So it stars... Where are my notes? Willa Fitzgerald and Kyle Gallner. Those are like the two main leads here,
Yeah,
and
that's all I need to know.
and the it's interesting because the chapters are told out of order.
Yes.
Which it was such a weird thing to start the movie with. Again, this is a great one to go in blind on, but that doesn't give anything away. But yeah, so when you go in, the chapters are told out of order, and when you get to there's a point where why it's told out of order makes sense.
Yep.
Well, good. I'm glad that you've told me that I shouldn't know anything about it. I won't watch a trailer. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I appreciate it. My number 2 was mentioned. It was a Pineapple Kiosk, and it's probably one that is going to be on a lot of year-end lists, and that's Dune 2. So Tony had this originally. So Tony, I'm going to give you a chance to start off.
So yeah, over the past few years, like Denis Villeneuve has increasingly become one of my favourite directors, and like as an actual viewing experience, I went to see this with my dad at the BFI IMAX on 70mm film, which as an actual pure cinema experience was probably the best one I've had this year. Like the scale and size of everything that Villeneuve does with Dune is incredible. Even doing these types of visual invention, like seeing the home of the Harkonnens, and it's shot in infrared, and just give it that like a unique black and white style, even compared to like other black and white films. It just looks slightly off, which makes it work all the better for the Harkonnens. All the cast performances are excellent for me, like Zendaya, Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, and Javier Bardem are highlights in it here. There's really interesting ideas in play about the controlling power of religion, even if at some point it just turns into the life of Brian. And yeah, it's just, and I mean, I've still not read the book yet. I wanted to watch the film first, so I didn't have any part of the books, so I just watched the film as its own experience. And yeah, this is just like as a cinematic spectacle, this is was one of the highlights of the year.
Yeah,
it's one I gotta see, but I did not like Dune Part 1 really at all.
If you did not like Dune Part 1, watch Dune Part 2. Let me tell you, I just really quick, this is my only note on the film for this episode. I was so frustrated with Dune Part 1. Why did I sit through this movie? Nothing happens. Zendaya showed up and then credits happened. I don't understand why this exists. And then I watched Dune Part 2. And let me tell you, it truly is just two parts of one singular film. You have to watch them back to back and really Dune Part 1 sets the foundation. That's so true, but you don't understand exactly how much that means until you watch Dune Part 2 and realize, like, oh, this is just one 5-hour, 6-hour film or whatever the runtime is. And cutting it off where they did on Dune Part 1 just did a disservice to that film as an independent film. But what they do with Dune Part 2 entirely validates everything from Dune Part 1.
I'm gonna quickly throw a 10-second wrench. I won't get into it, but for me, I like Dune Part 1 more than Dune Part 2. That being said, Dune Part 2 is a cool movie. Check it out.
And for me, it has one of the best scenes of 2024 when Paul first rides the sandworm. That is an amazing piece of cinema.
Yes.
You know, that's a 5 to 10 minute sequence that you could watch all on its own and justify seeing the movie. All right, Tony.
I mean, it's definitely seen that one at the BFI on IMAX 70mm was incredible.
Before we get to the number one film for all of our guests who are on the show today, we have a couple of other lists to add to the collection from people who have contributed a little bit of sound to our show. So let me introduce you to both Mark Hofmeyer and to Aaron Neuwirth.
Hey, Mark Hofmeyer here of Movies, Films, and Flicks, Deep Blue Sea, the podcast, and Jet Ski, the musical. And my 10 favorite films of 2024 are, starting at number 10, The Beast, then Mads, Challengers, Memoir of a Snail, A Different Man, Flow, In a Violent Nature, Hard Truce, 1% Warrior, and then Hundreds of Beavers, because Hundreds of Beavers is great. And a quick shout out to Land of Bad Trap, Small Things Like These, Sasquatch Country Sunset, Red Rooms, Humanist Vampire Seeking, Consenting Suicidal Person, Long Legs, Shadow Strays, Boodless, Godzilla and Kong, Nickel Boys, Do Not Expect Too Much from the End of the World, Evil Does Not Exist, Substance, Sonora, Heretic, Strange Darling. Go Hundreds of Beavers.
Hello to all the listeners of the Lambcast. This is Aaron Neuwirth, co-host of Out Now with Aaron and Abe, and writer for We Live Entertainment, and I have to go through my top films of 2024. I'll do a quick run through on the runner-ups here. The Substance, Daughters, A Different Man, Longlegs, Challengers, Riddle of Fire, Love Lies Bleeding, Problemista, The Last Stop in Yuma County, and I Saw the TV Glow. And as for the top 10 films of 2024, I have at number 10, Rebel Ridge. Number 9, Red Rooms. Number 8, Anora. Number 7, Ghostlight. Number 6, Dune, Part 2. 5, Sing Sing. 4, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Number 3, The Brutalist. Number 2, Hundreds of Beavers. And number 1, Nickel Boys, my favorite film of 2024. I hope everyone's able to catch up with many of these films. I think they're all pretty great, and I'd be happy to see them get more of an audience, especially some of these smaller ones that I listed off. Thanks to everyone involved in the Lambcast for having me on a few times this year. I look forward to more. Thanks, everybody. Happy New Year.
And Lisa Leaheey sent in her list, but she didn't record it, so I'm going to read it for you. At number 10, we have Smile. Number 9, Inside Out 2. Number 8, Cuckoo. At number 7, Mads. Number 6, Conclave. At number 7, Wolverine. She has American Fiction here because she's cheating from last year. The next one she has is I Saw the TV Glow. Her top 4 are Heretic, Longlegs, Late Night with the Devil, and Oddity. And now back to our regular show.
Tony, what's your number 1 film?
So my number 1 film, I mentioned previously that I had a one other silent animated film to talk about. It's also a film I talked about on the Lambcast before, earlier in this year, and I said I doubted that any film would beat it, and I was right. My number 1 is Robot Dreams.
Oh, good one. Great one.
This one, I've ended up watching it in the cinema 3 times, watched it again when I got it on Blu-ray, and yeah, this is a film that just really hits me, like the actual central friendship that we see between robot and dog, and how it develops, and also how it's like tragically broken apart, and the different dreams that that robot has as he's stranded and separated from dog, the way that you see dog's life as he grapples with that increasing loneliness after losing his friend, and seeing how it develops, and also the way it focuses on actually potentially needing to move on, and how sometimes these friendships can be a vital, important part of your life, but they shouldn't really define life, and how they can end up changing and developing and moving on and finding other friendships that have as much meaning to you over your life. All this stuff just really hit me when I was watching it. Like, the animation is excellent here. This really great 2D style. It really helps. The anthropomorphism used for all the animals is excellent. It does a great job at creating the style of 1980s New York. Yeah, this is one like the more I watch it, the more I see different bits in the background, the more I just fall in love with it.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning this a couple of times on the show, and I still haven't pulled the trigger on it, and I hate myself for not having done so because you're so enthusiastic for it. So Robot Dreams for Tony is number 1. Thomas, we don't get to find out what your number 1 is on the show here, but you can tell us what number 6 is. Hoo-hoo!
Yes, number 6. If you want to see my top 5, you can check that out at thisisforreal.com. But my number 6 here is going to be, I don't know, this is one that I just personally vibe with, and why it's hard to call this a best of the year list, but I rewatched it and just solidified its place on my list. And it's actually Luca Guadagnino's Queer. I was not the biggest fan of Challengers when I first saw it. And I think it just had to do, I mean, it was narratively jumping back and forth. I wasn't the biggest fan of, and I don't know, I just really had a hard time, I had a hard time connecting with that film. But with Queer, I very much connected with this one. I do think that Daniel Craig gave a good performance, but I honestly think it's actually Drew Starkey who helps make the dynamic of these characters so striking and so compelling in this movie. I know narratively people had some problems with it, and if I'm not mistaken, when I saw it at TIFF, it was a longer film. I think they cut it down for theatrical release. But I really vibed. Again, the word vibe. That's just what's happening with these movies for me. I just really vibed with it, and upon rewatch it, like I said, it just solidified its place here.
This is a movie that I do really want to see because I heard so many people talk about this movie, and the gents over the Film Rage podcast, they said, if you like Challengers, you're going to really love Queer because it is a much better movie, and it's a movie that I really wanted to try to see, but it didn't stay at theaters that long, so I had to try and catch it somewhere else. I just had not have a chance to see this, so hopefully when it comes to streaming, I'll watch it, but I'm very eagerly waiting for this movie. And I hear that Jason Schwartzman does a good job in this movie as well.
Yes, he does. Yep.
So,
it's kind of a more minor part, but yeah, he does.
It's based on a famous author, right? Is it? Who's the author that Daniel Craig plays?
I can't think of, because it's based on a book.
It's the guy who wrote Naked Lunch.
William Burroughs?
It is an adapted. It's an adapted
William Burroughs.
Sure.
Okay. Rashab, what's your number one?
All right, so my favorite movie of the year is I Saw the TV Glow. And James Sternburn has been, I think, just building an amazing film repertoire in terms of 2 years ago with We're All Going to the World's Fair and what's being called now as the digital trilogy that they're working on, with the last item of this trilogy being a novel. But I Saw the TV Glow is a really interesting metaphorical, very evocative and transfixing film about two teenagers who slowly grow into adults, and their obsession with a show, like a late night kind of young adult TV show called the Pink Opaque. And this show becomes like a very interesting symbol throughout the movie for basically these characters, for a dream of a life that they can possibly never live. I won't go too much into spoilers. I think similar to Strange Darling, in a weird way, this is also a movie that the less you know about, the more you'll be able to find. And I've just been, a little bit obsessed with this movie ever since it came out. I think visually it's such a slick and singular production. The whole thing is just bathed in neon, and it looks brilliant and captures the feeling of suburbia. But also at an emotional level, it's quite a devastating movie about these characters who are basically pining for their true identity. And there's many different interpretations. But the dynamic that these characters share and the journey that they go on, I think, is so compelling and so thought-provoking and open to your interpretation in many ways that I think the more you watch this movie, the more you'll be able to see the various things that have been put into it. So I would say one of the most interesting movies of the year, and I think someone else also had it on their list. So.
Tony, you had it as number 3. Quick comment?
Yeah, I had it number 3. I agree on everything that's been said. The performances, like Justice Smith and Bridget Lundy Payne, they're both excellent here. This is Justice Smith, like his work, especially in the ending, just a real punch and it's really like probably the most powerful ending I think I've seen in a film from 2024. Really interesting. I agree with that multiple times. And for folks, for me, on the gender identity aspects of it, that's really stood out to me, and it's what helps me. And once that's part of it really stirs my mind, everything just sort of properly clicks, and I was already liking it. Then when that element came in, it really boosted it up in my mind.
What I need to watch again, because I did not understand it at all when I was ended there. But I thought it was shot very well and the acting is good, so it's one I will rewatch.
Well, Vern, what did you see and understand well enough to put at the top of your list?
Oh, my number 1 is The Substance, baby. Oh yeah.
Yes.
To be more.
Yes.
Margaret Qualley. Oh my gosh, this movie is great. Directed by Coralie Forget after her epic debut with Revenge. I absolutely love The Substance. It's about a older woman who takes this substance so that her younger self can come out, and they have to share like 7 days with each other. But of course, they never do, and things go on after that. And I think the movie is absolutely great. It's a great message about women getting older, not just women, but just basically anyone just getting older and having to deal with that aspect there. I just love it. There's a lot more things I can say, but I only got a few minutes to say stuff, and so it's brilliant. It's beautiful. It'll win for best screenplay and for best makeup, and Demi Moore will win her first Oscar for for Best Actress.
I get the feeling that we've tipped some of Thomas's top 5 here.
Maybe a couple. I will preview that The Substance is in my top 5. Absolutely.
All right.
Yes. Woo. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I had The Substance at my number 6. Yeah, I said makeup works excellent, performances from Demi Moore, Mark Qualley excellent.
Sound design for Best Oscar. Sound for Best Oscar. That chewing sequence. Oh.
The Substance deserves like 13 nominations. Okay, I
Yes.
listed them out somewhere, but it'll get overlooked unfortunately in so many categories. But
I hope not.
I digress.
I'm glad it's getting as much. I think this is a body horror film to get as much attention as it has, but I'm really pleased it's getting all the praise and attention that the award season that it's got.
My number 1 is Late Night with the Devil, which was mentioned earlier,
Nice.
lower on the list. This was my favorite movie from the moment I saw it. I think it works really well both as a found footage type film and as a horror film. I think it's got some great moments to it. It's extremely well executed, and David Dashamalian is excellent in the film. So somebody else had mentioned it. I think it was Thomas. He had it on his list.
I did, but you covered it. It's a good movie. Give it a watch.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think great film.
Great
Also
movie,
recommend watching Ghost Watch as well if you've not seen that yet.
Well, guys,
like
I appreciate everybody showing up for the show. Thank you very much for being on the show. This will go up sometime this week. The video will take forever to put together because all of the movies that we've got on the show here. But I appreciate it very much. And until next time, everybody, we'll see you on the Lambcast. Bye.
Woo.
Happy New Year.
You've been listening to the Lambcast. If you have an idea for a show or would like to join us on the Lambcast, contact us at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Find us on Facebook, just search for Lambcast, or on X, formerly Twitter, at Lambcast. And you can find us on YouTube as well. The Lamb site can be found at largeassmovieblogs.com. We'd also love it if you would leave a review on iTunes.